Okay, hello everyone. Welcome again. This is the last day of ICLC version 2021, streamed live from Valdivia in southern Chile. We are closing the sessions today, and precisely we're going to start today with the final papers presentation. Um, so let's have a look on the program. The first presentation is entitled Synergia at Networked Collaborative Live Coding Environment by Vasilis Ayomirianakis, Svoronos Kanavas, Yanis Sanos, and Georgios Diapoulis. Apologies for my pronunciation. So now we're going to start with that, which is a pre-recorded video. Isn't it? Yes. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vasilis Ayomirianakis and I will present you Synergia. Synergia is a networked collaborative live coding environment which is based on Emacs editor. Our goal is to broaden live coding practices and to offer an environment that provides features of networked collaborative live coding such as code sharing, audio feedback, communication, improvisation, interaction. To build Synergia, we used open source software such as Tmax Terminal Multiplexer, Emacs, SuperCollider, and OSI groups. We use Tmux Terminal Multiplexer in order to deal with concurrent processes such as OSI groups and Emacs Server Client. Synergia utilizes the PyVPN tool to set up a VPN server with a static IP address on a single Raspberry Pi. It's also critical that it gives profiles with separate client IP addresses that may be managed for future use. PyVPN provides profiles to connect to the server as clients. Users can use applications such as OpenVPN Client in order to connect to the VPN server. When clients connect to the server, they can access the interface by using SSH from their terminal. Any client that can access the Synergia interface can send a code fragment from the server to connected nodes of local SE-LAN via Open Sound Control. Synergia communicates with client SuperCollider using OSI groups, which allows clients to transmit and receive data via peer-to-peer messaging. It also uses a variant version of SCHAX Redux OSI Groups class in SuperCollider by Zanos Ioannis to manage and send messages to client SuperCollider programming environment. In Synergia, we modified this class so as to manage to send to multiple IP addresses that are connected as clients to OSI Group server. Synergia is also language agnostic. Many computer music languages like SuperCollider, Tidal, Foxdot, and more support Emacs connectivity. Synergia relies entirely on sharing code and executing it on its performance system in order to create local replicas of the performance. The concept of Synergia is to motivate people to improvise and to create their layouts using the Emacs editor. The default Emacs configuration of Synergia contains SuperCollider and Tidal cycles for live coding. In Synergia environment, all the members of the ensemble can use the same live coding environment where each one holds a program state that generates music. Moreover, because Synergia is configurable and extensible, with Emacs Server Client mode, it is possible to run many SuperCollider and Tidal Cycles workspaces for collaborative live coding. Synergia has a default design with SuperCollider and Tidal Cycles workspaces for the users to do live coding, and this can be extended to include more live coding Emacs modes. It also provides GitHub and code maintenance for code sharing and for educational purposes. Additionally, Synergia is simple to replicate because it operates on a cheap solution, the Raspberry Pi, and its image is easily shared over the internet. The environment is designed in such a way to give to all users access and permissions such as read, write, and execute code on other users' workspaces. In that way, direct communication like having a chat room it is also provided. All users can watch each other's code and activity during the performance. The idea in Synergia is that all performers can share the same text buffer, they can create new, or they can use the existing SuperCollider workspace buffers. For instance, any user can create windows and thus to design their appearance onto the screen. They can split windows vertically or horizontally to watch other users' workspaces during the performance. Users can alternate the appearance of their live coding session by customizing Emacs variables such as fonts, colors, and other attributes of the text. One difficulty we had to deal with in Emacs during collaborative live coding was the interruptions when the programmers were reviewing code at the same time. Concurrent evaluation based on control commands while coding produces issues in Emacs key engine. Control key executes various functions in Emacs, such as screen motion, buffer visibility, multiple windows, line execution, etc. This can cause Emacs behavior issues and thus to interrupt the live coding session. To solve this, we have bind the line and snippet SuperCollider code evaluation to Shift key instead of Control key. All the other control commands have stayed unchanged. Synergia contains SuperCollider classes for live coding, such as BA live coding classes. Those classes offer an easy way for a beginner to deal with sound and patterns, and generally with live coding practices in SuperCollider. BA live coding classes also contain a clock mechanism for synchronization purposes during live coding. To be able to run BA classes to your SuperCollider, it is required to install those classes to your machine. Synergia's GitHub source includes usage manuals. Automatic and manual connections to the Synergia server are available. Shell scripts can be found in the Synergia GitHub repository that can automate the procedure. For example, there are shell scripts that runs OSC group client and SuperCollider on your machine so as to receive OSC messages from the server. With this configuration, the connected clients can listen to a live coding session without needing to log in to the Synergia interface via SSH. That means that there is a way for the audience to listen to live coding session with a minimum of effort. This is an important aspect of Synergia that it can support a live audience. Anyone can attend the live coding session on Synergia by connecting to the server using OSC groups and starting a local SLang process. We strongly believe that collaborative musical live coding is actually a communication medium where messages can be transmitted in both auditory and textual form. Performing using Synergia can sufficiently cover the limitation of distance in the communication process by means of the network. That applies for both performance and the audience. In our opinion, this work develops and promotes new techniques and new tools for networked collaborative live coding and interactive arts. Now we can watch parts of a live coding session in Synergia with two performers. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, guys, for your interesting presentation. And welcome
Thank you
as well.
for having me here in this ICLC conference. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. We're really happy to have you. And let's see if we got some questions or any comments here in the chat. Let's see. Is there any comment or question? We got people in the different social media saying hello, starting, the morning over here. And well, let's wait a bit. So probably it will be good if maybe if you want to go deeper on any aspect that probably you want to remark and invite you. We got in the video one speaker, but maybe one of you want to add something that would be good.
Yes, I don't
In
know
fact,
if Jasmine want to add something more on that we've seen on the presentation.
I think we have a question in the chat here in StreamYard by Yanis.
Oh, yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, this is Yanis. So Vasilis was giving the talk, but you said thank you, Yanis. He meant to thank you, Vasilis, by the way. So it's Vasilis giving the talk. I wanted to ask you, Vasilis, to say a little more about the underlying technology that you specialized in. I mean, I'm going to present later on about the OSC groups part and what I do to share code, but you tried a different approach using Emacs with Tmacs. It wasn't clear. It wasn't very clear what you want to do with this, and perhaps you would like to comment also about the limitations and about the next steps that you want to take using browser-based approach. What did you learn? How did this help, etc.? This is my question. Okay, there we are.
Yeah. In Synergia, yes, we use the PyVPN tool to set up a VPN server with a static IP address on a single Raspberry Pi. And this is critical because the PyVPN tool provides with VPN profiles that comes with unique IP addresses, and we can use those addresses to send messages to through OSC group server to clients that connected to Synergia interface. So there are limitations with VPN technology. One is when a client connects to the server, it loses internet access. There are solutions that can change this. For example, can change the net mask inside the server, but I haven't tried yet. This is one limitation for the moment, but in general, it's a very good tool because it gives easy access and a secure access to clients when it connects to the server. And it's also, those profiles that provides is very manageable for further use. for example, as I said, to send OSC messages through OSC groups. I don't know if I answered the
Well, I was
question.
more referring to Tmax rather than the VPN aspect.
Yes, Tmax. Yes, we use Tmax in Synergia because we have to deal with concurrent processes such as OSC groups and Emacs server clients. So if we have to run OSC group server and client together at the same time, we have to use Tmax, and Tmax is a great tool that runs separate processes at the same time. So in Synergia, there are 4 processes running, OSC group server client and Emacs server client at the same time. So we need Emacs to deal with that.
Okay, I'm fine. Thank you, Vasily.
Thank you for your question.
It seems like we got one more question. I think is Simon Vanderbilt is asking, will everyone have to get Super Collider installed, the same local install on all machines?
Yes. You only need to install Super Collider into your machine and to run OSC Group's client binary. After you connect to the server, you run your client binary, your OSC Group's client binary, and local SC lang, and you can listen to a live coding session. If you want to do a collaborative live coding session with somebody else, you need to SSH to the server. If you don't, if you just stay as audience to listen to a session, you just connect to the server via OpenVPN client application and to run Super Collider and OSC Group's binary client. You can find all these instructions in the GitHub repository of Synergia. And you can automate the process by running some shell scripts that there is inside this repository.
It will be nice to get that link, I mean the GitHub link, if you can paste it on the chat so we can share it now.
Oh yes, of course, in the YouTube chat, you mean?
Yeah, where is more simple for you, and we can share it.
Okay.
Spread it.
We'll do it right away.
He's going to put it on YouTube too. That's cool. This is great. It's quite interesting tool, and probably it will be very, you're going to have a lot of visits to your website, and well, looking forward for the proceedings to spread the paper itself, the whole text. So let's see if we got another question or comment. In fact, we have some room for one more. Any other comment or question? Yeah, people are saying they want to use the system. So yes.
Okay. It would be a pleasure to do it.
Yanis, again, want to point out something. This is good.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
I think it wasn't very clear from your explanations, and also in regards to the previous question asked here, that in your system you use Tmax for people to be able to program on one computer remotely through SSH. When you use Synergia and you use Tmax, you are using your Emacs, but your Emacs is running a Tmax process which is actually running on one only SE-lang process, which is on Raspberry Pi. Is that right? You're not
Yes.
replicating a space on each client. If there's somebody in Lisbon and somebody in Vienna,
Yeah.
they don't run separate SE-lang. There's one SE-lang in your Raspberry Pi in Athens, for example, which is what makes it
Yes,
interesting.
Synergia runs SE-lang, but if somebody wants to listen to sound that comes from the live coding session in Synergia, it needs to run a local SE-lang into their machine.
Yes.
And those groups client binary as well.
Just making that clear. There is an advantage and a disadvantage. The advantage is that if you have just one space, you're actually using the same data, even if you're, for example, running a random pattern. If you're replicating code in random pattern in different local clients, then the random data will be different. In your case, in fact, there's only one process running.
Yes.
So yeah, so you're actually sharing even random data. Okay, I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
Yes, but if somebody runs, for example, an extension, other users needs to install this extension, the class library of SuperCollider, locally.
If they're listeners, but not if they are running via Tmux, because if they're running via Tmux, they're actually running on one computer.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Well, thank you once again. I'm going to have a quick last look if there is any other question. Yes, we got one by Simon again. He's asking, so the only thing running on my local machine is the SuperCollider synth?
SuperCollider, yes.
And is Lang is running remotely and sending OSC to my server? That's the other question.
Yes. Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, sorry. I think my flow wasn't very good. So SuperCollider language is running remotely and sending OSC to my server? That's the question.
SuperCollider is running on Synergia, and through OSC groups that connected with SuperCollider, it sends the OSC messages to the connected clients. That there is, if somebody connected to the server and runs OSC groups client binary onto their machine, it's possible to receive messages, OSC messages from Synergia server.
Okay.
So you need to run SLang under your local machine to run OSC groups client and to connect to the VPN server. That's all.
Great. Well,
and of course, you need to have, as I said in the presentation, of course, you need to have the OSC groups class by Zanos Ioannis installed into your machine, so as to receive those OSC messages. You need to run this class contains OSC code inside, and the addresses that you need to so as to receive the messages and to send if you want. You can send messages from your local SuperCollider to Synergia server if you want, and to all others connected clients.
Okay. Well, we're going to finish this presentation. We are in perfect timing, I think. Just give me a sec, please. Sorry, we are just finishing this presentation. Thank you once again for this interesting paper. Today, the general topic is social and anthropologic. So we are moving between these kind of tools that you are providing, to connect people to do something, but as well we're going to have some presentations more related to the other side, the user side, what people are doing with this tool. So thank you once more. It's very, very interesting to start with the day with your presentation. Thanks. And
thank you very
see you
much.
soon. We are in
Thank you
touch.
very much.
See you soon.
Bye.
Thank you.
See you.
Bye.
Okay. Now we're going to move to the second paper of this day, and that will be live streaming. It's not a pre-recorded video, so we're going to have the discussion straightforward after the presentation. The title of the paper is On the Fly Cantina. What is this? Let's ask Ivan Paz, who is presenting. The authors are, in fact, Ivan Paz, Patrick Porgiat, Luca Frelli, and Anne Weinbach. Once more, excuse me for my pronunciation. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you, Alejandro, and thank you, Luca and Patrick, for joining, and thanks everyone. I'm going to give a brief, to provide a brief introduction about the paper on the fly cantina, which is actually not necessarily a research paper, but it's something that we have been trying to frame with this anthropological view. So I'm going just to give a little bit of context so we can put everything try to make sense of this. So On the Fly is a European project that actually started in Barcelona because we were working at the limit of our capacities in the Top Lab community of Barcelona. So we decided to join efforts with other live coding communities, and there is a framework to do this, which is some European fundings. So we get in touch with the live coding communities of Ljubljana, Karlsruhe, and also with the live coding community of Netherlands via Creative Coding Utrecht. So when we designed On the Fly, we said okay, so what is live coding actually, how to write the live coding practice, how to put it into a paper to submit it for a project. So we identify basically 3 axes, one dedicated to performative practices, to playing. The second one, and of course these are quite intertwined, so it's difficult to separate them. The second one is precisely research, and the third one is oriented to the community or to the audience or public, etc. So that when we wrote the project, we created, as part of the project, a research group, and at that time it was 2019, I think, or 19, and we decided to have a virtual research group without knowing about the pandemic. It was like I don't know why, but we decided a virtual research group. And so the virtual research group is the people who is authoring this paper, is me, Patrick, Anne, and Luca. And so as part of the research, we decided to bring the community together and to have an informal chat about to know what actually are the trends within the community. So the first meeting actually was entitled, Now That We Have Gathered, What Should We Discuss? And it was basically like a free poll to the community, like, what is important today, now that live coding is 20 years old, that we have been doing live coding in different ways. And so we collected, and these are in the paper that we are trying to shape in its most like deliverable way. So first we collected when is live coding, and the relevance of the live coding manifesto is actually something that we are discussing right now as the two in the two cantinas that are part of this ICLC. The second point was the music and language trends in live coding. The third point was the performative practice of live coding. So this, and of course, this is detailed in the paper. But then with these structures, we started to propose some cantina. Each cantina is actually the second Monday of each month, and it's about an hour and a half free discussion when people basically share ideas, references, and reflections on their own practice. So after that, we decided the first one that is here, that I am actually, let me go through my notes. So one, I'm going to comment, well, this one and another one, which was basically okay, dedicated to live coding and machine learning, or is that yours, Luca? Am I? No. Okay.
I have the tools.
Okay, so I'm basically commenting on this, and I'm going to pass the word for Luca and Patrick to comment on the other ones. So one, like every one of the cantinas is actually showing some things that are happening within the community, and is a way to look and to share within how we are using this. So basically, when we had the cantina about live coding and machine learning, that we were also, some of the ideas actually are reflected on the paper that me and Shelley wrote and presented yesterday, which is first, what is happening with this? No? So a big concern was, or a big observation was that basically machine learning tools are tools intended to optimize something and sometimes to automate. So maybe in live coding it's easy to think in the things that we want to automate, but not as easy to reflect on what should we optimize. So that was a big question because basically machine learning is about optimizing and automating processes. So what happened in this idea? So the second idea is another concern that had been also discussed. So it was about big data versus small data and how people is using these things to train. So an interesting idea I'm just going to share here about that reflects a lot about small data is is the idea of you can learn a lot from only 3 points. And this idea reflects how we in live coding using small data or collecting data on the fly, maybe we should focus on algorithms able to have only 3 points and learn the most of it from those points instead of training data over a big data set with a lot of concerns that they had been also presented here. And the last concern I'm going to show to pass the word is how we visualize the algorithms. If live coding is about visualizing algorithms, visualizing human and algorithm interaction, so how algorithms or machine learning algorithms actually visualize within the live coding practice. And we commented a lot about this. It's also on the paper. So I'm going to pass the word to my colleagues here. And
I can continue, I guess, yeah. Also briefly talk about another session we had, which was also very much informed by COVID times, but of course it was already before COVID a big topic in the live coding community. We asked the question, how alive is a live streamed algorithm, and discussed also like just shared stories, discussed certain things, question issues, chances about the situation that we were all like facing with as a live coder. And I guess everybody in the audience did probably some live stream performance in the last 2 years, or at least saw some. Here were also some, it will just also like pull out some points, more will be in the paper or in the report. What was very interesting was a question about cheating in a sense, and cheating is also something that came up on different topics. The question, when is a live coding performance a live coding performance, and where a live coder maybe should feel bad about like not doing things from scratch or using already different things. And it was an interesting concern for some, and for others not at all, whether like if you pre-record your screencast and stream it out, how this is still a live coding performance, as of course this gives opportunity to have multiple attempts, and it takes kind of like the excitement maybe out of it. But of course we all know that it, as a digital medium, it is completely indistinguishable from like a live situation, which is of course different than a traditional acoustic performance in a space where it is, of course, you can record it and reproduce it, but it's still very difficult to translate everything. We were talking also about the spaces of the live coding streams, both in a sense of that new virtual spaces.
Okay. Patrick is frozen for me.
Were really seen and felt as their own spaces that created new opportunities and different modes of interaction with each other. Like, for example, if it would be a traditional algorithm, you would maybe talk to the person next to you, but you can hardly address everybody in the whole room. And so it is just a more communal feeling. And there were even like thoughts about having a chat room even in traditional like settings to have the same like one-to-many communication mode. But what was also very interesting, and also then like ended up also being about aesthetics in the end, or about changing aesthetics, was that we are in different physical spaces when we are doing live coding streams, or when we are perceiving live coding streams. And there were also reports that artists who were doing more or less dance music at algorithms usually would also start doing more ambient or more calm music that is then more fitting for the kitchen or a living room rather than a dance room. And another thing is also the physicality of the speakers, of course, is very different. You will, or most people, if you have a studio maybe, or like a good sound system, then you will have like a lot of physicality in your sound with a lot of bass, but it will probably not reach the physicality of a live PA and a club. And then last, we were also talking about issues with live coding streams. Technical issues, it is a bit harder. It can be harder on the machine if you're streaming visuals, for example, that you have either bandwidth or CPU restrictions. But overall, there was also a point that is really very much speaking for the live coding community in general, that the live coding community is very accepting of any kind of error or glitches or things that don't work out quite right. And so it is not a big issue. One last thing that touched me personally. Actually, Ivan maybe should talk about it, because I also just heard it in the Cantina session. But this is also, I'm glad that we had the Cantina session. Was stories from the Barcelona Top Lab group about their Ivan, correct me. How was it called? La Hora del Life Coder?
Correct.
Correct. Where they met basically when the first lockdown started. They met like every day, more or less, at the beginning. A member of the community did a live stream at a precise hour of 8:08 p.m. And I was touched how the live stream really helped people cope with the difficult situations, because then suddenly there was something to look forward to, and like a sense of community and everything. So interesting stories for me, for sure.
Okay, so another one of the cantinas. Everyone starts with a question or a starting point that we pose to the participants, and this time was the question was, how do the tools we use shape our artistic statement? And it was quite clear already very quickly in the cantina that this is a bit of a loaded question, because we spent quite a long time discussing or defining the difference between artistic output and artistic statement. And I don't think this is only through the maybe the nuances of English language, but actually seems to be quite an important topic for many artists, that their practice actually can be thought about in different levels, where what they produce or what they do, or what we could call output, is not necessarily completely always synonymous with what they intend and what they think about in the sense of artistic statement, or maybe there was even some distinctions between what one is thinking and what one is publicly stating as an artistic public statement. So there were, of course, then slowly we moved to more topical, more into the meat of this topic, and some of the developers of this live coding environment discussed that when we design something, we do not have control over how users are going to use it. So the tool design and then the users live in a kind of feedback loop. Especially in open source languages with an active community, where the author is getting feedback quite quickly and from the users, and implementing or adjusting the tool in response to this comment. There were questions if live coding environments can be described as so-called research products. If this approximates their role more than a typical software product that is usually exists in a commercial setting. Then of course, we were talking about languages and how this relates to thinking. Basically, how a language enables the thought which exists in a context of a language, and also how thoughts enable the language, in sense that language also cannot exist without thoughts. And I guess we all remember from the from the Top Lab Manifesto the importance of thought, and that it is the interesting thing that is we strive to put across in a live coding performance. Then also we compared maybe live coding tools with the traditional instruments. In a sense, someone said you cannot build a saxophone with another saxophone, but with a programming language, you can build another programming language. For instance, then of course, some references were shared also maybe to music theory and some books or articles. And maybe to end this, one interesting point was that the phenomenon of glitch, or maybe the tendency of artists to use a tool to the point or to the way, in a way, or that it doesn't actually work anymore, or it exposes its problems or its limitations, and to try to walk this kind of fine line between working and not working, between using and abusing a tool to get interesting things. And this can also then, of course, also motivate development of new tools with new paradigms where these limitations can be overcome. So I think this is a kind of quick summary of the tools debate.
But the discussion continues, because it was not yet our last cantina. And the next cantina is actually happening tonight at sometime Chile time. I think it is 7 Central European time.
Yeah, it's at 3 Chile summertime.
And the link to that cantina is on the ICLC webpage. And we talked on the on Wednesday, we talked about the manifesto and how we relate to it. Today, we want to talk about what a future live coding manifesto should be or include, or do we need a future live coding manifesto? So tune in.
Okay, guys. I was suggesting if you have. I thought that you got any video to share.
No, we don't record
Okay.
the cantinas, because basically we are trying to provide a very relaxed environment where it does not feel like we are performing. It's really what we do to for the research purposes is we try to keep notes each cantina in an Etherpad. And then from this, we gather these points that we are now talking about, and that we will also be writing in the paper. Sometimes this works very well, sometimes not so much, and we have to kind of remember to be a bit harder to struggle to remember what was actually said or not. But yeah, this is the kind of idea.
Okay. Well, let's see if we got any question or comment. Let's see. Well, there is a lot of good vibes in the chat. Well done, and some personal stories about what it implies to do live coding, and this I don't know how to say exactly in English, but this bonded feature of having glitches, errors, and things. So I think that's one of the things that make everything very live, and that was, in fact, for me personally, the first time I watched and I present a live coding session. It was so exciting like never before. Like maybe when I was a kid and I went to a rock concert or something like that. It was a huge impact. So yes, thank you. Yanis got some comments and a question. Please, Yanis, go ahead. We can't hear you, Yanis.
I'm saying hello to all three of you and hello to Lucas. Nice to see you.
Hey,
Again,
Yanis.
only, well, about a month later. Great. Very impressive, very interesting, and many questions. First, with regards to the first talk which we had, is it from Patrick? The first speaker is called Patrick?
No,
Ivan.
Ivan. No, Ivan, yes. You explained the activities of the cantina. I want to ask, what are the outcome goals? What do you want to produce? And specifically, I have some interests which are in our program, in our little cantinas back in Greece, and we want to join you at some point. So I want to ask, for example, how about papers that are reviews of technologies? How about a repository of tools? How about a set of performances that you produce as an outcome of your activities? And finally, maybe an archive of recorded performances. How do they resound as in your agenda, these 4 goals?
Yes. So for the cantinas or for the research group, we at the beginning, we decided that we are probably going to produce a bunch of questions rather than a bunch of answers, because it's something that live coders do. We problematize things. But what we are doing actually is we have a wiki. Actually, the wiki is also part of On the Fly. So the idea is to place, On the Fly has some research stayings, let's say research residencies and artistic residencies as well. So there have been people working on specific tools, on specific performances, on different things, and all of that is going to be available at the wiki from the On the Fly project. So the idea, because during this second part of the year is in its second year, so the idea is to try to make sense of all of this and try to create a kind of repository, as I was saying, more probably with questions, or at least, let's say, more or less well-formulated questions, not in the sense of mathematical problems, but in the sense of research questions, maybe, so that the community can just go there and have an insight to what is being discussed.
I think you're right. Questions are important at this stage for research. Questions rather than outcomes. Before the outcomes come the questions. So you're quite right. So I agree with you there. But, yes, I think your approach sounds to me great. And but still, to be more concrete, can you tell us whether other people can join you and how? Because at some point I may have some time to join you. In what way? And you mentioned also, besides the wiki, you mentioned the Etherpad. So could you tell us maybe what are your main 2 or 3 tools? It's interesting. How do you work together?
Maybe I can try to explain a little bit about this. Basically, for internal communication in the group, we use Riot. Mainly, besides, of course, emails for coordinating everybody. Then also some kind of regular internal meetings on Jitsi. And then for the virtual research group specifically, we have been running these cantinas, again, monthly in a public Jitsi room, and using the Hangars Etherpads, which are kind of available to everybody if they know where they are. So it's not really meant as a final destination, which will be kind of the wiki. We have the wiki set up, but it's not really populated with content yet. The idea basically is that our virtual research group will put our research in and also try to map a bit already existing research on the topic of live coding, not to be comprehensive, but maybe to be just make a little bit of historic overview and to try to create a structure which could work even after the end of on-the-fly project as a hub where researchers, and this means everybody, of course, like Open Wiki, everybody will be able to put in their references to research which we didn't find or map, and also discuss it in a way or present it.
Okay. Well, thank you once again, guys, and thank you, Yanis, for your question as well. This is very interesting. Just closing to move to the next presentation, but just a second to say that we have, as you did said, we got an on-fly cantina today, 3 p.m. o'clock Chile time, and you can find the Jitsi link in the website of the ICLC 2021. So please join the team. It's really interesting, and there is a lot of interesting topics addressed there. So thank you, guys. See you soon.
Thank you, Alejandro.
Thank you.
Bye.
Ciao.
Ciao. Okay. So now we are a bit late, but we're moving to the next paper, which is a pre-recorded video. The title is Layers of Unpredictability, Developing the Aesthetic and Identity of a Network-Based Live Coding Ensemble. Authors are Maina Marie, Shelley Knotts, Eldad Sabari, and Melandri Lauvsha.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the presentation for the article Layers of Unpredictability, Developing the Aesthetic and Identity of a Network-Based Live Coding Ensemble. So this presentation is going to be done by myself, Mina Marie, also with Shelley Knotts, Eldad Sabari from Concordia University, and Melandri Lauvsha from University of Pretoria. We have written this article collectively as members of a live coding ensemble called Supercontinent, which is a network-based live coding ensemble. And even though we are 4 people only that are participating in the presentation at the moment, we are in fact many more in the ensemble itself. So the different things that we are going to cover today in the presentation and that we are covering in the article is first who we are as the Supercontinent Collective, how we navigate multiple layers of unpredictability, how we build aesthetic choices based on our response to unpredictability, and how we are building a collective identity through the multiplicity of our own individual experiences. And also at the end, after we've done a conclusion, we'll have a small Q&A section for anyone who would like to ask us questions. So the Supercontinent Collective, who we are. So as I mentioned earlier, we are in fact many people in the ensemble, more than the 4 people that are presenting here. So Eldad Sabari is located in Quebec, Canada. Jessica Rodriguez is located in Ontario, Canada. Celeste Betancourt, who is in Colombia. myself, who I'm located in Portugal at the moment, Shelley Knotts, who is based in UK, Melandri Lobsher, who is from South Africa, Oka Chiho from Japan, and Abhinay Koparsi from India. So the ensemble has developed through 3 years of weekly rehearsals, as well as performing in various situations and various conferences and performances like Montreal Connect and Half Stack Conference online, and many more. Our philosophy and objectives. So our main objective has always been to build a group identity by negotiating shared live coding practices online through the Estuary platform. So the Estuary is a web-based platform that we are using to meet together and practice our live coding. And we do have a kind of informal, not so formal, 500-kilometer rule, which means that we try to include new members in the ensemble that have a minimum of 500-kilometer distance between every other member of the ensemble. So this is part of the reason why we're called Supercontinent. So we aim to promote diversity and inclusion. We come from all kinds of backgrounds. We all have different experience levels in live coding and in the languages that we use. And many different genders are represented as well. And we do have a very strong ethic of creative tolerance and respectful communication. So everyone's background and everyone's creativity is respected, and everyone has an equal voice in the way that we discuss our process and that we discuss the direction of the ensemble, as well as creatively the decisions that we want to take. So this is just a screenshot of the Estuary platform to give you an idea of what it looks like. So this is a blank slate before we start rehearsing or performing. So depending on how many members are present during that day, sometimes the layout will change a little bit more. Sometimes there will be more windows if we are more people. But as you can see, we each have our names, and we have a choice of different languages that we can use within the Estuary platform. So normally the language for coding music is Minititle, and for coding visuals, usually we will go with Sinicero, which is Jessica's language, and or punctual as well. We also have a terminal chat at the bottom where we can communicate during the performance to see for various reasons, either to take some kind of decision or to solve issues if need be.
So I'm going to talk about the multiple layers of unpredictability that we have to navigate when we're performing as part of the Supercontinent ensemble. As we all know, live coding in its essence is rooted in unpredictability, in the sense that the live coder doesn't always have the ability to predict the effect of their code. In Supercontinent, when we're using the Estuary interface, there's additional layers of unpredictability that we have to deal with, stemming from having multiple sources, and each of them being rooted in human psychology or the use of our technology. Oliveros describes 3 independent layers of organization in telematic performance, which are related in complex ways: the technical, the administrative, and the artistic. In Supercontinent, each of these levels brings with it an element of unpredictability for the performers. In Supercontinent, we rehearse super regularly, so we meet every week for half an hour, and over time this has helped us to develop different strategies that help us navigate these unpredictable elements of performance. So the live coder's task is about communicating an idea to the machine through code, assuming more of a role of a conductor than a traditional music performer. That is, they have to communicate ideas to an external element, be that another artist or a computer. There's always going to be a fragment of this idea that's going to be morphed or transformed due to delegating its execution to an exterior entity. Artists of live coding develop their knowledge of the language to be able to accurately communicate their ideas through code, but there's always an element of unpredictability, and errors can creep into this process. In supercontinent, this human-to-machine unpredictability accumulates in a group of live coders improvising together. When two or more live coders collaborate, the scope between the interpretation of an aesthetic idea, its formalization into media-producing code, and its interpretation by our collaborators is multiplied. Added to that, compared to embodied creativity, a code has a much slower response time. So the beginning to end of an execution is obscured due to the language, the system in use, and the time it takes to type, and the cognitive overhead of translating a response into code form. This time delay adds complexity to being in sync with group members, and listening to our code output is also more complex through the collaboration and the interface. During rehearsal or performance, as code develops in complexity, the sounds become denser. It's harder to know which part of the code are responsible for elements of the sound feedback loop. Each individual has to learn to zoom in and out of their sounds, sometimes focusing solely on the effects of their own code while editing it, and sometimes listening to the overall soundscape when developing ideas to fit the group general aesthetic. There's lots of unpredictability that's specifically related to using a telematic setup in our ensemble. We can probably all relate to the unfortunate and now infamous cat lawyer and how our experiences of online interaction can be unpredictable and prone to technical failure. In supercontinent, the primary means of communication are through code and sound. Body language, which can be really important in communication in co-located groups, is not available. We do also communicate using text messaging, both when using the SDRA's chat window or through post-rehearsal conversations in Discord. During rehearsals, the chat is used for multiple purposes: voicing opinions, like or dislike during jams, checking in with others about technical issues arising, for example, audio glitches caused by overloading the server, or sometimes just deciding on a general aesthetic direction before we start the jam. In co-located performances, artists usually aim to obscure the elements mentioned above. This is normally done by using each group member's skill to communicate effectively using solely body language. Since the use of telematics renders this impossible within supercontinent, questions of how much of these elements should be openly communicated through words to the public arise, given that our chat is part of our performance interface. While supercontinent leans towards transparency and open communication with the audience, not everyone feels the same freedom to express themselves with words during a performance or rehearsal. And in the heat of performance, time spent typing in the chat could sometimes be better spent resolving a technical issue or developing an idea. Critical issues such as server overload, which may be experienced unequally by group members, do, however, warrant group textual communication. This fact, coupled with the possibility of network issues, creates an additional layer of unpredictability for the ensemble to navigate. Each member has a different way of adapting to these elements, which of course affect the overall performance and group dynamic. Finally, I want to talk about the most unpredictable element of group improvisation, which is, of course, human unpredictability. Of course, in any group improvisation setting, we deal with and often enjoy our collaborators doing unexpected things. But in SuperCollider, this is extra complicated. Our group members all have different schedules, different external commitments, and are also joining the rehearsals at a different time of day. This means that the number and constellation of people attending each rehearsal and performance might be different, which affects the overall group aesthetic and dynamic. Working with a different subgroup of ensemble members almost every week allows individuals to step up in ways that are sometimes outside of their comfort zone by exploring different coding techniques or filling the sonic or visual space in a similar fashion to how one of the absent performers usually does. It's not only how many, but who is present that drives the way the ensemble improvises. In a larger group, we might have to write less code and give more space to our collaborators. And in a smaller group, we might need to write more code and fill more of the sonic space. And when we combine this with each performance-specific aesthetic, this is a driving factor in the development of the group's collective identity. This also gives the motivation to each member of the group to push the boundaries of their own creative expression.
We do love the unpredictability aspect of our ensemble because interacting with this unpredictability brings newness, kind of an evolutionary mutation to our live coding This newness is valuable for us as a group because it helps expand our aesthetics both individually and as a group. And for this to work, for us to expand rather than abandon our individual aesthetics, the collective improvisation environment needs to be safe, open-minded, tolerant, respectful, supportive, and also playful, because play is safe or feels safe. The safety allows the discovery of each other's aesthetic preferences more comfortably. It also, fosters adaptability to every emergent situation, allows the focus for troubleshooting skills, and it promotes learning from each other. Everyone in the group comes with different skills, different backgrounds, and some are more music, tonal metrics oriented, some are more sound design and electroacoustics, some are more into abstract, ambient, some are more into beats, some are more into the visual live coding, some are more into the sonic live coding, but the roles have rotated, sometimes shifted even on the fly out of necessity. So in 3 years of weekly rehearsals with Supercontinent, we've developed this environment of like safe, playful, inclusive experimentation that usually is very well supported by each other. And if somebody suggests something, typically it will be followed with like, yeah, sounds good, let's do it. In terms of the collective strategies for improvisation, our weekly rehearsals are 30 minutes of improv, 30 minutes of discussion, and we wanted to find a quick way to get into a meaningful creation and interaction with a sense of cohesion. So we sought a really accessible way to decide quickly on a shared objective, and also something that could serve as a reference for listening to each other. And we also wanted to develop a shared aesthetic vocabulary for the ensemble. And the ensemble members, for that purpose, started designing and accumulating a collective live coding strategies, typically given one catchy word title, and we put them on a spreadsheet that was shared among us. And every time we could use this as a kind of like conversation starter when we get into a rehearsal. So, for example, a rehearsal could be something like, "We'd meet, how was your week? Should we go for annihilation, or do you feel more euphoric today?" And the response would be, "I'm sleepy, let's go for schlep." And everybody would know what the role is and what the parameters is, and in 2 minutes we'll be in it, playing and understanding what we're doing. The strategies describe a collective configuration, a mood or a style, something specific, parametric, in music, in rhythm, in sound, whatever. And this bank of strategies really helped in developing this group aesthetic identity and creative process, while also supporting this multiplicitous individual aesthetic in a good balance. Everybody can support and can provide ideas for, or resources for, or just suggest a strategy to play with. It also provided a kind of a template for moving out of our comfort zone and the way we are used to live code or improvise or make music. We used to use it more regularly when we found it was useful and when we created this spreadsheet. But by now, we've come to a point where we can get into this syncing mode very quickly, even without it. If you like, you can browse through the spreadsheet. It's available. The link is on the slide. You feel free to add your own. We'd love that. You see some random suggestions sort of thrown in there as inspiration. In terms of combining these approaches in performance, so I guess the most important thing is that before we had this tool, it used to take us a long time, like 10 to 15 minutes sometimes of free improv to get into something. So this tool and intent really helped Supercontinent in developing its identity, and sort of understand who we are and how we play together, and support each other's personalities and interests. And because the ensemble is made from creative, busy people in many time zones, rehearsals are often with random subsets of anywhere from 2 to the full ensemble. So the cohesion is maintained through these identity and tools. Mostly, I really feel we have developed an inclusive ensemble identity and trust that allows us to sync to each other's quickly and joyfully. And these weekly rehearsals are an escape to a safe and fun, creative place.
The accumulation of experiences, both individually and as a group, plays a really important part in how our identity has developed over time. And this can be split into two areas. The first being what you're seeing on screen now, multiplicity of individual experiences. So as individuals, we are able to contribute to the collective. The collective's identity is greatly enhanced by the quality and quantity of our individual experiences and those experiences that we can bring to the table. Independently from the group, each of us has our own personal motivation to keep learning and pushing our boundaries. Boundaries in the sense that we can develop our creativity even further. This is done through the technologies that we use, specifically the programming languages available on the Estuary platform. Independently from the creative process, members are also active in our respective local live coding communities. And the more that we engage in these communities, the more performance opportunities we can bring to the other members of Supercontinent. And then this then leads to building more ensemble experience. And then with the accumulation of all that experience, we can achieve, or we can strive to achieve, a cohesive collective identity. Right, so now we get to our multiplicity of experiences of our collective experience as an ensemble. Increasing our performance opportunities helps us better navigate the layers of unpredictability resulting from the action of performing. This can help us to achieve a more cohesive performance within the given constraints. And it also allows us to address technical issues more efficiently. A vital part of our activities includes post-rehearsal communication, which really enhances our group dynamic. And just by sharing our impressions, bringing new ideas to the table, bringing new resources that we can use, we learn and build from and build long-lasting relationships, by understanding and listening to each other on a very human level. Yes, and at the end of the day, we want to achieve a collective creativity from these various perspectives. So, as I said, we've built long-lasting friendships despite being located very far from one another, and these have all been facilitated through our shared experiences, just by discussing what our objectives are, what we would like to do in a rehearsal, and what we would like to do in a performance. We recognize that building a collective aesthetic identity, through remote live coding is quite an ambitious task. But we also realize that it's a constantly evolving process, but that it also brings with it very rewarding and valuable experiences, learning opportunities, and human connection that really can build individual artistic development. An important part of building our ever-evolving collective identity involves that we practice patience, trust, and consistency as members of Supercontinent. We also maintain an acute awareness of these layers of unpredictability that present themselves at any given moment. And we have respect for each other's individual aesthetic. It is in the accumulation of all these elements that a collective identity can be found. and most of our work resides in a constant practice of finding and maintaining this delicate but beautiful equilibrium. Thank you for joining us for this presentation. We will now be moving to questions.
Hey, great. Thank you guys for this very stimulating paper, and welcome to this slot for questions and comments. And hi Kelly, hi Eda, hi Anne. It's good to see you, at least a little bit on real life situation through the camera.
Yeah, we kept the same background as you see, like. So.
Oh yeah. We are here in a workshop in this cultural center. It's a community center. This one, so very ad hoc with all the things we are talking about. So let's see if we got any comment or question over there. It was very active, the chat during the presentation, especially talking about this technical stuff. So there is a question by Lottonhall. He's asking, do the technical features of History help facilitate your goals of diversity, inclusion, and or creative tolerance, as opposed to other platforms' ways of making music? Maybe we can.
Yes, I can go. Well, I think one important thing to know about supercontinent, it emerged more or less with Estuary. Estuary was built as part of this networked imagination project by David Ogborn, which is SHERC funded, and part of the whole project was the creation of Estuary and creation of ensembles. One of them was supercontinent. So the ethics of both platforms, or the platform and the ensemble, came together. And the idea of having an accessible way for people to code together regardless of bandwidth or operating systems, and do so in multiple languages sync together, and making it pretty easy to add languages as well. For example, one thing we haven't shown yet, but on Estuary we've done, we've started playing around with simple text replacement, where we basically code in the languages that exist, but we exchange commands into different character sets and different languages. I code from right to left in Hebrew, Abinai can code in Hindi, and Okachiho in Japanese, and basically we can actually also the flexibility of this platform allows, although it's actually not different languages in this case necessarily, but it's visually kind of like more supposed to be decolonial and open, and just kind of like share this idea that it's accessible and it's trying to be neutral. Of course, nothing is ever neutral, but that's generally the idea. So yes, Estuary is built for us, and we're built for it.
I would also add to that Estuary facilitates learning in a lot of ways as well. Like, I think a lot of us in the ensemble were not super confident in tidal cycles when they joined. I can speak for myself at that from that perspective at least. And just being able to read other people's processes in Tidal whilst you're live coding, and sometimes even copying and pasting other people's code and then editing it and feeling your way around it, I think is one of the amazing ways that we've been able to learn from each other through using Estuary. So I think in that sense, that's super inclusive.
Yeah, very straightforward on it. Very directly, you can do it just on the text, on the code of the other people. That's really cool. Let's see if we got. I think we got room for one or two short questions or comments. Let's see. Yes, good vibes in general terms, I would say. Any other comments? Maybe the other presenters? Everybody's loving this. Yes,
I see
it's
some
quite.
questions on the private chat.
Yeah. Do you have any institutional support?
And how did it all start? Also, there's a question from Yanis.
Yes.
I mean,
Or framing.
Eldad kind of covered that a little bit, that we're connected to this SSHRC institutional funding through McMaster University, of which Eldad is a co-investigator and I was a collaborator on that grant. And that grant, part of its specific aims was the formation of this international laptop ensemble that uses estuary, and seeing how we can use that in sort of a decolonial way. So that was kind of the institutional support and framing, and we've received some funding through that to fund some of our performances. So yeah, that's great.
Great. Well, thank you. I think we have to move to the next presentation. Obviously, all the time the chats are open, so we can still sharing ideas and things through the chat here internally or in the YouTube channel. So, yes, there is one more comment. Renzo saying, thanks for the presentation. One question: how do you see these particularities of different regions or languages being affected by the design of the platform? Maybe a short comment on that would be nice. If the platform is affecting the way you...
I'm sure it is. I'm still thinking how to formalize, how exactly. Any ideas? I know it does. Like, I mean, on one hand, it's supposed to be neutral, but when we join in, I guess one thing I can say is whenever we join in to a rehearsal, we're so in the same space, regardless of time zones and and geographic. I know there is a huge difference. We all come from different lives and different places, but when we're there, we're there, right? And it feels very like we are in a space together. I don't know if it probably doesn't exactly answer the question, but
yes, it's a bit like what is happening right now.
Yeah, right? I think Mina had some interesting thoughts around it feeling like you're going into a rehearsal space, and so it doesn't kind of matter so much that we're in different physical places, because the platform sort of provides that framing of like, look, we're going into the ensemble space now. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I think is okay. Thank you once again. We're going to move to the next paper. We are running late a bit, but I think it's all right. We got time between the last paper and the panel. So that's it. Thank you, guys. Quite interesting paper, and looking forward to read the full text.
Thank you so much.
See you. Bye. Okay, so now we are going to move to the next presentation, which is live streaming. So we got the title of the paper is Replicating Super Collider Workspaces in the Networked Live Coding. The authors are Yannis Sanos, Nikos Karalambidis, Alexandra Karalambidi, and Vasilis Ayomir Yanakis. Once again, excuses for my pronunciation. Please welcome.
Hello. Alejandro, I want to thank Alejandro and the ICLC team for letting me present. And to preface this by saying this is a bit relevant for the paper. At the end of a very adventurous week, I set out from Athens on the night between last Friday and Saturday, and it took me just 1 week to reach home here in Tokyo. due to various complications here in COVID policy for entry, it was quite incredible. But this is also related to the paper, how explaining how all this came to be. It was during my sabbatical when I was in Tokyo back in 2018. And because some colleagues back in Athens had interesting projects that I wanted to participate in, the only solution was to do something remotely. And so gradually, the idea developed to do dance remotely in order not to do just live coding remotely. And here we are about 3 years later. And this is the adventure that I'm going to report on now. So I'm going to move on to presentation of my paper here. In this paper, Nikos helped do the hardware as well as much of the software networking. Alexandre did the graphics. Vasilis has been extending the approach and providing some critical input for how to move towards the next steps. And so let's go to the overview. This is the overview of the paper. The objectives are collaborative embodied performance, embodied in the sense of having dance involved, so literally just the body performing, sharing data from the performers, and also code over the internet. For our approach, I use OSC groups to share code and data. This is an open source software by Ross Benzina, and it's the last step from a series of previous tries with different types of software. It can be installed on all three platforms, Linux, Mac OS, and Windows, and is therefore quite conducive to doing work. Together with Nikos Charalambidis, we modified the evaluation loop in SuperCollider to be able to share evaluated code over OSC groups as soon as you execute a piece of code in SuperCollider, whether that be in Emacs or in just the SuperCollider IDE. It gets from SuperCollider lang, SC lang itself, it gets forwarded to OSC groups, and therefore this is the beginning of replicating a workspace. All code is shared between everybody. Yes?
Yanis, sorry.
Yes?
We are not seeing your presentation, so please
sorry.
try to share again.
Yes.
That's all.
Yes. I forgot that step. Share. Oops. Here we are. So this was the outline. And we were in the second step of the approach, modifying the evaluation loop of SuperCollider to share evaluated code over OSC groups. Furthermore, I added a custom OSC func hook to broadcast data, which comes from messages received from sensors. Then I developed the first version of the custom library, which I'm now modifying, which enables one to share scripts and synth devs and audio files from a GitHub repository. So in order for all performers to share one environment, they just have to pull from that repository, and there are simple automation mechanisms that allow you, as soon as you boot the server, to replicate all the infrastructure that is needed to have a certain kind of sound design environment and interaction environment, including also maybe GUI elements, knobs, utilities, etc. Some challenges that we met over the way, on the way, specifically at the last rehearsal, at the last performance in Lisbon in November of this year, is that under unprecedented circumstances, OSC groups may not be able to communicate with the server because the local Wi-Fi or even the wired connection manipulates certain port numbers or changes certain IP numbers, and you may not be able at all to resolve this, in which case the only recourse is to actually use a VPN. If you have one at hand, then you are in a good position. This is what enabled us to actually perform on Lisbon and to have a video here. A short term, and we had just 2 days to set this up. So after that, I'll show you a brief demonstration and a look to the future, which I think is maybe the most interesting part of the message here, is that having gone through this 3-year technical voyage and lots of rehearsals and being able to taste some first fruits of the dynamics of performing live over the distance, now it feels like it's a time to include different forms of collaborative net coding, to open up also to different types of tools, also to different ways of using the tools, including maybe audio streaming. And this is what's up for us for the next year. And I'd be very, very happy to see more people from the community, including from this ICLC community, to join us in the future. Okay. So this is our setup. This is more or less a simplified picture of our setup for performing in November between Lisbon and Corfu. If on the left hand, the west side is Lisbon, we have one performer is sending data from dancer sensors to Supercollider. Supercollider produces the sound and also sends the data to OSC groups, as well as code that I code myself. In this case, it's a solo performance at this stage to OSC groups, and OSC groups forwards it to Corfu or to any other location if you have more locations via OSC. It forwards both the sensor data and the code, where it is received by the remote laptop, in this case located in Corfu, and the laptop executes it on Supercollider or just reacts to the OSC input on Supercollider, replicating the same sound, while at the same time, the reverse movement is happening from Corfu to Lisbon with the other performer who is performing in Corfu. So in Lisbon, it was Nathalie Mandila performing, who came with us. And in Corfu, it was Mary Randu, who was performing at the studio at the university, at the Ionian University, supported by a group of volunteers and colleagues and students that had to do the sound support, or audio engineering support, the networking support, the video scoping, and also they video scoped and transmitted live also the video, which we're going to see. Before going on, regarding the video, a basic aesthetic and philosophical challenge or research challenge for this project was whether dancers will be able to coordinate their movements, but also their mood and performance styles, communicating entirely through the sounds that they produce, which are reproduced on both or on all locations of all venues performing. So initially, the dancers are not supposed to see each other. We decided to relax this for the performance in Lisbon because simply the experience of Mary Randu performing would make the show much more understandable, and you'll see this in the brief excerpt that I have to show later on. But I wanted to clarify that Mary Randu was not able to see Nathalie Mandila at all. She was actually performing from sound, although Nathalie occasionally turned her back and looked at the screen and was able to see what was happening back in Corfu via Zoom. We used Zoom. Okay. This is a more detailed look at our setup, internal setup. We have a Wi-Fi from the sensors. Actually, it is XB from the sensors. It's received by a coordinator. It gives the data via USB to the host computer. It's received by Python. And SC also transmits it both to OSC groups and to open frameworks to produce graphics, which is an interesting part. And the OSC group server then furthers it to the remote computer, which replicates the same situation locally at the remote location. The sensor system that we used is by Mariah Ballman, and it's XP based. I will be more brief for reasons of lack of time here now, and proceed to the 3 brief examples that I have. Yes, sound techniques are samples from recordings made in Tokyo, a simple technique to start with, which you're going to see here in the initial sample, some more advanced techniques using granulation, and finally a set of pretty chaotic and interesting FFT-based spectral processing techniques. Here is a 1-minute excerpt from the more or less the beginning of the show, and we see in the front, in the foreground, we see Natalie locally. In the background, we see projected image at the back of the stage from Corfu. Next example is from about the middle of the performance, where we're using some more complicated algorithms, some more interesting algorithms, and where stuff is getting wilder, occasionally out of hand. And this is what makes it interesting also for the performers themselves, but I leave it to you to experience. Okay, we did not have as many rehearsals as we wanted, and the sound design, as well as the interaction design, was done through the rehearsal. So the final example is a shot of the way we work, and we are emphasized on documenting both the code, history style, and the data by recording the data. This is still work in process, recording the data as it comes with a timestamp. And also video sessions of all the discussion, which can be technical, of some details of what kind of movements do what kind of sound, whether that sound needs to be tweaked or not, whether the sensibility needs to be tweaked, how we tweak that sensibility. And then we also record the sensibility, the tweaking process in code, but also more general discussions about how the piece is going to work. And basically, it's like collectively developing the piece in its entirety. We share both the choreographic moment and the graphics, and especially the sound. And it's just the code that cannot be shared by everybody, because not everybody is a programmer. So here's a short version. Just after we finished our rehearsal versions, we had an extra day, and we were trying to do to explore a different type of interactivity by live coding it, which is going to go into our next performances.
Νομίζω είναι καλά, ναι, και εγώ. Είναι τόσο σοκάρτος. Ωραία. Αλλάζω χωρίς να αλλάξω τον αλγοριθμό, δώσω την παράμετρο, το κάνει λιγότερο ευαίσθητο. Θέλει πιο δυνατή κίνηση για να φέρεις. Δηλαδή 5-10, τώρα είναι 5-10, 5 ωραία, καλύτερα. Δεν είναι σωστό που αλλάζω. Κάνει διαφορά. Είναι πάρα πολύ μικρό. Το κατεβάζω το ευαισθησία λιγάκι τώρα. Το κατεβάζω το ευαισθησία τώρα. Πιο εύκολα σιωπή, εντάξει. Ναι. Οπότε το αφήνετε εκεί. Την ανεβάζω στο full, σχεδόν full.
Okay. And this is the code session that we were just seeing. These are different tries, trying different variations. I mean, I won't insist on this. What we are going to do in the future is test several different dancers. Different approaches of the dancers are challenging, but also enriching. We need new interaction strategies which combine the right amount of complex behavior with recognizable behavior, approachable for performance and audience. Also, we discovered the importance of exploring musical form strategies and choreographic terms of those strategies in order to just form the entire piece itself. And we will also try to combine different types of sensors in the future and camera-based techniques as well. As a postscript, the opening up this group to other performers and dancers who may want to join is also very high in our priority, in the priorities of our agenda for the next year. Opening it up both in terms of communication, in terms of the infrastructure provided, and finding where it interfaces well with other existing tools, as we see in this conference, etc., is something that's, I think, not just interesting, but very important in this whole endeavor. Thank you very much. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Yanis, for this interesting presentation. I don't know, we usually got some combination of live coding and algorithmic composition with dance, which is very interesting. Yeah. But the point here is this system allowing to connect different dancers in different places through OSE. Let's see, among other interesting techniques that you're applying, but that was the first thing that caught my attention. Let's see if we got any comments or questions over there in the chat. Yeah, they're still chatting about the supercontinent thing in the chat. Let's see if we got something here in the inner private chat in our session. It's all right. Yeah, that is part of the flow here. But yes, Maybe personally, I would like to know a little bit more about the sensors that the dancers are using. Is just the usual pressure sensors? What kind of technology are you using there?
We're using this. It's a system made over a series of years of Mariah Ballman, who's a super collider live performer in Europe. In fact, it's called Sense Stage, and it was performed. If you look at Sense Stage, she was in Montreal for a while she was starting to develop this. But anyway, it's XB based. It's yes, she was a Concordia. Yes, and that. Thank you. And it's very small, lightweight. It requires just lithium batteries and extremely robust, and it doesn't require Wi-Fi, so it's standalone, and that's why we chose it. Yeah, that's the system.
That's really.
We're looking forward to developing it further. There are other systems also, mainly all Wi-Fi based on this ESP chip from Shanghai, which is sold also by Adafruit and other people, and is sort of also Arduino compatible. It's more popular, more available, but personally, I distrust Wi-Fi. I have had very bad experiences with Wi-Fi, so if possible, I would like to boost to continue working with XP and develop that further.
Okay.
Even though it's a little bit more difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, but more reliable. At the end of the day.
More independent, yes, as well.
Okay, let's have a look. Eldad Sabari is asking, maybe Eldad can talk directly if you want to, Eldad. We can add you.
Hey, Yannis. So yeah, like I love the. Maybe I'll just move the window so I can look more straight at you. But I love the visual aspect of it. In the dark room with the sound coming telematically and the dancer responding. It was cool, and I'm always interested in this telematic situation in general. Like the experience of being somewhere else in your mind, basically.
Yes, that's the point. Yes.
The question keeps on coming. I'm not sure it's a question yet, but the struggle, the pondering about this complex versus simple movement and interaction with the computer and how it's perceived. I think not only by the audience but also by the performer. Like how direct your action leads to a sound that you understand or that you comprehend. It's always something I don't quite know how to resolve. Because the simple movement and interaction with sound is just boring very quickly, right?
Yeah.
But the point of when the connection between the movement and the sound is not clear, especially to the performer, not only to the audience, then it's hard. I don't know. It's difficult for me to know how to develop the actual connection with your body.
Yes, we started with very simple stuff with another group, which you can see if you look at my YouTube link. We have many recordings from early sessions with the Japanese dancers. And very soon, we moved over to the exact opposite. We even used feedback algorithms, which were even more extremely complex and chaotic than what we showed here. And my only answer is that it is a very interesting journey to work with the dancers on this. Both the Japanese dancers and the friends back in Greece have strong opinions on this matter, and they proved during the course of 2 years to be much more conducive, much more open than I thought, independently of culture. The reactions were literally really enthusiastic. And they also were quite explicit about what works and what doesn't work. But there is no answer as to where there's where there's a sweet spot, or whether we want to actually experience, go more extreme and risk being faced with chaos and frustration or not. There is no sweet spot. There is no answer. It's a continuous process.
Right.
But I think that is the answer. The answer is the excitement of that process. And the more we work, the more our vocabulary becomes richer, the better the performances are going to be. It's a matter of building an experience, I guess. So this is my answer. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Yanis. Very interesting stuff. It's a really contribution for the conference. Really good paper. So
again, thank you very much for making this possible, even though under these circumstances it was.
Yeah. Have a good rest now.
Yes.
We know it's late there.
I'll stay on for the rest. Yes.
Thank you very much. We want to move now to the final paper of this day. It is a paper in a pre-recorded video. Very interesting stuff as well. The title is Algorithms, Autonomy and Agency, the Social Practice of Live-Coded Electronic Dance Music. The author is Lawton Hall.
Hello, my name is Lawton Hall. I am a composer, musicologist, and distinguished graduate fellow at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee in the United States. My creative practice is informed by my research work, and in particular, I'm interested in exploring the connection between the internal structure of music and how music operates externally as a social practice. In this presentation, I'm going to explore some of the issues raised when live-coded electronic dance music, which is often called algo-rave, is looked at in a broader cultural context. Algo-rave raises interesting musicological questions. It's made entirely out of procedures and algorithms, which would seem to lend itself to an analysis that focuses heavily on its inner workings. But at the same time, it's a deeply interpersonal practice that flourishes in online and in-person communities. So what is needed is a more networked approach that puts the people in the algo-rave scene on equal footing with its tools and technologies, and identifies those moments of transformation that occur when these humans and non-humans interact. Algo-rave, which combines the words algorithmic and rave, is a relatively new practice under the larger umbrella of live coding. It differs from other forms of algorithmic music in that it focuses on danceable loops and conditional repetition rather than stochastic or random processes. The first event called an algo-rave happened in London in 2012, and the first scholarly writing on algo-rave is a 2014 paper by Nick Collins and Alex McLean. The term is not trademarked, so anyone is free to throw an algo-rave, as long as algorithms, music, and dancing are involved. And it's become somewhat of a niche global phenomenon in the 9 years since the first London show. Beyond performing, listening, and dancing, people in the algo-rave scene are involved in teaching live coding and programming workshops, moderating online forums, and developing the coding platforms that are used to create algo-rave music. In fact, according to Collins and McLean, the emergence of algo-rave is due in part to the development of new free and open source mini-languages like Ixylang, Gibber, SonicPy, Orca, tidal cycles that facilitate EDM-style looping and layering. These languages are often built on top of earlier platforms like Super Collider and include convenient functions that make it easier for new users to start experimenting and making music. Many languages allow performers to engage more directly with musical patterns rather than having to think like programmers. Let's take a look at a simple code example in tidal cycles. The bottom line here defines a drum loop with hi-hat, bass drum, and hand clap samples. The question mark in this line introduces some randomness and means that approximately half of the hi-hat notes will not play each rhythmic cycle. The two lines at the top introduce conditional transformations based on the number of times a loop has played. Every 4 fast 2 means that the loop will play twice as fast every fourth loop. And every 3.25 with the left arrow means that the loop will be rotated a quarter cycle every third loop. These conditionals are cumulative, so that every 12th loop will be both rotated and played twice as fast. While a particular syntax is required to make these instructions executable by title cycles, the code itself is simply a means of accessing ideas about musical structure that are independent of any particular language. They're simply mental constructs that can be described in words, like play this drum pattern, add some randomness to the hi-hats, or play it twice as fast every fourth cycle. In this sense, algorithms are like the thoughts or intentions of other musicians, that when translated into sound allow for collaboration and improvisation in real time. This interplay between abstract algorithms and sound is central to the practice of algorave, and sets it apart from other forms of electronic dance music. Algorithms help define the musical material of algorave and give it internal structure and logic. And yet, at the same time, algorave is dependent on a community devoted to exploring the musical potential of algorithms and motivated by a desire to experience them as dance music. Without the social practice of algorave, algorithms would remain mental constructs that are knowable cerebrally but never experienced phenomenologically. It's therefore necessary to investigate both the material and the social dimensions of algorave and the ways in which these two realms interact. Few would deny that music is a sociocultural force, but how exactly music functions culturally is not so clear-cut. The social study of music tends to fall between two extremes. Does a piece of music, song, or genre derive its sociocultural agency through its internal formal and aesthetic properties, its rhythms, harmonies, and form? Or is the power of a musical work constructed by external social forces, like its market value, historical importance, and relation to cultural norms? Folks like me, who are trained in the classical music tradition, tend to take the former approach, and use music theory to carefully analyze the intrinsic grammar of musical language. Critical sociology, on the other hand, has tended to privilege the social construction of music, and often explains the formal properties of music primarily in relation to external forces. Theodor Adorno is one of the few early prominent scholars whose work encompassed both musicology and sociology. He was trained as a composer in Vienna before becoming a key member of the Institute for Social Research. As a result, his shadow looms large over the cultural study of music. For Adorno, all music can be neatly divided into either popular music or serious music, and the distinction between the two stems directly from the relationship between extrinsic cultural forces and intrinsic musical properties. Popular music is a market commodity, and market forces determine every aspect of a musical work, its chord progression, rhythm, lyrics, etc. Ultimately, popular music, for Adorno, has no real agency, and to understand popular music, all one must do is study its cultural context. Serious music, on the other hand, is opposed to standardization, and thus autonomous from cultural forces. To understand serious music, which for Adorno usually meant Germanic classical music, it's necessary to carefully analyze the form, structure, and details of the music itself. Serious music is inherently dissonant and disruptive to cultural norms. Adorno's highbrow conclusions about popular and serious music are difficult to take at face value today, but he did identify a tension between the internal and the external ontology of musical works that has been picked up by later scholars, without the rigid binary about these two spheres of music. Social constructivism, the idea that the character of musical works is determined by social forces, is often associated with Pierre Bourdieu, and has been especially influential in popular music studies. In many ways, algorave seems to exemplify Adorno's idea of autonomous music. All of the musical material in algorave is, after all, reducible to mathematical constructs and abstract rules that are independent of individual artists, places, politics, or economics. Yet in practice, algorave is a networked practice, involving a range of co-equal actors, including artists, algorithms, programming languages, online communities, music festivals, teachers, and students, whose interactions shape not only the sound of algorave, but its emergence as a distinct social practice. Like other forms of technologically mediated music, as well as improvisatory practices like jazz, algorave reveals the limits of both strict materialism and rigid social constructivism in musical cultural analysis. Recent music scholarship by Georgina Bourne, Antoine Aignan, Christopher Hayworth, and Tia Denora has questioned essentialist ideas about social context. This has involved revisiting some of Adorno's ideas about the agency of serious music that were largely ignored by later scholars who focused on his theories of popular music. In this view, the content of a musical work or practice matters and helps define the contours of its interactions with other actors in a social context. Much of this recent scholarship borrows some elements of actor network theory, a research methodology that emerged out of science and technology studies. In its purest form, actor network theory questions whether cultural forces are adequate explanations for social phenomena, since society only arises from the actions and intentions of the actors within it. If actors stop interacting, social assemblages disappear, since there are no outside social forces holding them together. Actor networks are therefore in constant flux, so actor network theory focuses on momentary associations that arise when agents in the network interact. When tracing associations, actor network theory distinguishes between neutral intermediaries and transformative mediators. Both relay intention between actors, but an intermediary has no effect on the nature of an association. In other words, its output is the same as its input. Mediators, on the other hand, shape social interactions by transforming, distorting, or otherwise modifying the intention that they carry between two actors. It's not always immediately apparent whether something is a mediator or intermediary. Passive intermediaries can become active mediators. One of the most controversial aspects of actor network theory, yet one of the most important for the study of algorave, is the idea that non-humans have as much agency as humans in defining the nature of associations. Musical algorithms and programming languages are as central to the practice of algorave as the human artists who use them. But these non-human actors only become significant when they work as mediators that transform human interaction. In other words, non-humans, like algorithms or programming languages, are not just surrogates for human agency, but potentially co-equal agents in the social practice of algorave. Adorno's strict binary between autonomous, serious music and socially determined popular music breaks down when looking at algorave, because both of these distinctions treat certain actors as intermediaries when they are in fact often mediators. If algorave is truly autonomous from social concerns, then human actors are disenfranchised. Algorave artists merely relay the music generated by algorithms and code. If algorave is purely socially determined, then algorithms and software passively reflect the will of the algorave community. In reality, the social practice of algorave is not unilateral in either direction, but rather results from the two-way exchange between human and non-human agents. The musical potential of algorithms for making EDM has inspired artists to create coding frameworks, which has in turn made algorithmic improvisation more accessible and caused algorave to expand in popularity. In order to study a musical practice like algorave, it's necessary to identify those moments when the will of agents is transformed through mediation. A musical identity starts to become visible by tracing the transformative interaction of mediating actors, including the music itself. When these transformations stabilize over a span of time, for example, since the first London algorave in 2012, then a distinct musical practice emerges. I'd like to close by discussing two moments of mediation or transformation described by figures in the live coding community. The first comes from Thor Magnusson, who in 2011 wrote about his experiences learning the coding language Impromptu. Magnusson was an accomplished user of SuperCollider, but Impromptu is a very different language with a steep learning curve. SuperCollider is object-oriented, whereas Impromptu is a functional language. Magnusson found that the functional and aesthetic differences between the two platforms, as well as the online community surrounding them, influenced his musical thinking. He found that in SuperCollider, he was focused more on sound synthesis, whereas in Impromptu, his attention shifted towards higher-level compositional structures, like notes, scales, and beats. Both platforms are equally capable of working at the micro or macro level, but in practice, they each inspired a different way of approaching music. Magnusson's experience with Impromptu challenges the idea that technology is neutral. Both platforms allowed him to compose and experiment with the same algorithms and signal flow, but neither was a passive intermediary between the composer and his music. In other words, the programming language acts as a mediator. The different ways in which each translated algorithms into sound affected not only Magnusson's thought process, but also the character of the music he created. Thor Magnusson is the creator of the live coding mini language ICLC, and he mentions that his experiences with Impromptu influenced the design of ICLC. In their first paper on Algorave, Alex McLean and Nick Collins attributed the emergence of Algorave in part to the availability of new mini-languages like ICLC and tidal cycles. These platforms are not simple surrogates for earlier languages like SuperCollider, but offer something new and different. Their transformative agency has shaped both the sound of Algorave and offered different ways of thinking about making music. Another moment of mediation comes from Joanne Armitage. Since 2015, Armitage has taught all-women live coding workshops, and as a result of these workshops, the number of women participating in the Algorave community has increased considerably. Women are less likely to work in technological fields, and gender discrimination in computer work has been well documented, including in the free and open source community. Digital music production suffers from many of the same gender inequalities as other tech fields. Music producers are more likely to be male, which has influenced the design and marketing of commercial music production software. Commercial platforms typically feature a graphical user interface that encourages a particular mode of music creation that caters to its male user base. The women in Armitage's workshops often felt pressure to master commercial software like Ableton Live before they would be taken seriously. The comparatively direct engagement with musical materials made possible by live coding in platforms like ICLC and Tidal has allowed Algorave to be a site of greater gender equality relative to electronic dance music as a whole. By creating music with code, the workshop's participants felt greater freedom to experiment, play, and fail. Several have gone on to become Algorave artists and perform regularly. Armitage describes Algorave as reframing the relationship between human and computer to include a much broader social network of different supportive parties. The mediation between algorithm and musical material and the emphasis on teaching and learning have disrupted social inequalities and allowed Algorave to become a venue for more equal musical participation. These moments of mediation in Algorave demonstrate the necessity of networked thinking in understanding the social situation of contemporary music. Social constructivism and material determinism offer clues for understanding the way music works in society, but both fall short when they do not acknowledge the two-way influence that humans and non-human actors exert on one another. Live-coded electronic dance music is an exciting new arena that is reframing music production as a networked social practice involving abstract algorithms, concrete technology, and a community of artists and amateurs devoted to exploring this new direction in music creation.
Okay. Hello, John.
Good morning.
Morning. Thank you. Thank you for being here and sharing this very interesting paper and linking all these social aspects. So it's very suitable for this day that we have entitled Social and Anthropologic. Let's see if we got any comment or direct question for you. Yeah, there is a sort of philosophical discussion in the chat. And, yes, everybody's looking for the complete text.
Latour is in the paper. He didn't make another presentation, but Latour is in the paper.
Okay. Yes. There are more languages that we can learn, says Yanis. Let me see. Simon, no, there's a comment over there. Yeah, probably I just can add that what you mentioned about the actor network theory is very interesting, and probably I'm not an expert on these topics, but these three taxonomies or three categories that we can define on actor network theory, centralized network, the decentralized, and the distributed. Maybe algorithm is blending all of them at the same time and changing all the time. Sometimes the network is distributed, sometimes it's centralized, sometimes it's, I don't know. It's very lively.
Well, I was very excited to hear about what the supercontinent folks were doing with estuary, because I think that it's very much, and then they mentioned that in their Q&A, that the platform itself is really facilitating this sort of decolonialized approach to making music in this way. And so
Yes.
it's simultaneously very much a social thing that they came to it and said they had these creative goals, these goals about diversity and inclusion, and then this platform that was available has allowed that to become a reality. And they said it took over the course of 3 years of working together, but I just think that it's a really fascinating back and forth between the platform and the group of people, and the issues of being, the decolonialization and being a global practice.
Yes, I think there's the point that you made about gender distribution, equality on gender. It's very interesting and quite interesting the way technology allows this. Is technology allows to do these practices, but at the same time, influences the way people design a sort of ethos, a code of conduct. So that's really interesting. I was present in Armitage workshops and things, or Alex McLean workshops, and they are very horizontal. Everybody is welcome for real. So it's something that emerged of this technology and informs as well in a feedback, in a virtuous feedback, the design of the future technologies. We got a question over here. Let me read it again. René Moncayo. Hola, René. René is asking, how has the participatory involvement created a new glossary? Probably he means the neologisms that we got in these practices. How has the participatory involvement create a new glossary?
Well, I think it involves new ways of thinking, and I think that part of my interest in this research project, this topic, is sort of seeing what you folks, the ICLC live coding community, are doing, and then sort of thinking, how does this reflect outwards towards other forms of music making, that perhaps that things that were considered in the past perhaps more vertical or hierarchical are perhaps actually more a little more horizontal, or involve a little more two-way exchange than they've been discussed in the future. So that's one area that I'm interested in, is taking what's happening on the cutting edge of live coding and seeing how that can influence musical thinking more broadly. In terms of like a glossary or vocabulary, I think it is. I think a lot of just ideas, just the idea that we could actually improvise in real time with formal musical structures across continents. Maybe we don't have words for all of that yet, or a glossary for that yet, but we know that it's possible and doable. So it is reframing some things.
Yes. There is another kind of common question by Alejandro Franco Briones. He said, is transpost-humanism always the answer? How about explaining computers' role in live coding with concepts like general intellect by Marx, or fixed surplus or value, or relative surplus, etc.?
I would, if I were a Marx scholar, I would be interested in exploring those topics. I think that, and maybe this sounds like evading the question, but one thing that does interest me is how much of the live coding community is working in like a free and open source space. Not that that is free from economic concerns fully, but it is perhaps a little more free. Like I said, I'm not a fully fleshed out Marx scholar, so I'm not quite prepared to comment on that. But I think that's definitely a direction worth exploring as well. But I am just hesitant, and I think this is maybe the point of what I was talking, is like going too far in one direction or another, because you do have like social constructivism that's looking at things through very social and economic terms. And I don't think that that's entirely the whole picture, because I think that the music itself is exerting some agency in these social formations. So trying to carve out a middle ground.
Yes. Thank you. One more comment. Let me see. Gonzalo Pacheco suggests Merleau-Ponty's phenomenology could work, or the second order cybernetics by Maturana Varela. I love that, Maturana Varela are Chileans. They have really interesting theories about cybernetics and autopoietic systems and all this stuff. And one more thing, Alejandro Franco, asking, is there any way of explaining the human-computer relation beyond actor network theory? Well, I guess yes. Maybe you prospect something else, I don't know.
I'm certain there are, and I know actor network theory. I think Bruno Latour is like the second most cited scholar in the world, second to like Marx. So a lot of people are on the actor network theory train. I do think it provides some vocabulary for finding that middle ground, trying to get past some things that were happening in the chat, talking about these like 20th century, binaries. It has to be one thing or the other. And that's what is appealing to me about some of that vocabulary and language, is that it's a bit of a middle ground. And I think that some of the scholars that I cited, I'm looking at like Georgina Bourne, Antoine Aignan, Christopher Hayworth, they're using some of that language in doing these social analyses, but aren't going like full bore actor network theory. It's not like an orthodoxy. So I think there's a lot of room, but it's just, to me, what's appealing about it is how it provides a middle ground and a way out of some of the rigid binaries that of looking at these things that we kind of had to deal with in the 20th century scholarship.
Okay, I think we got a couple of minutes more to develop something. Actually, we got in the private chat with the presenters, there is some ideas by Renzo. Maybe we can invite Renzo to, please, Renzo, summarize your point or your question. So we can afford it in a couple of minutes. It will be nice. Instead of me reading your chat. Are you there, Renzo? Or only audio by him?
Well, I can see his question. Renzo was kind of looking at the etymology, the word technology, the idea of techne plus logos, and technology being like, I believe, like sort of knowledge made durable or practical. Now, the idea of knowledge being embedded in technologies, and I think that that's something. And I'm not speaking for Renzo now; I'm speaking on my own. But that's something that is definitely apparent in what we're doing here. That, again, I'm just going to use that presentation with the supercontinent folks because that was very exciting to me. That it, this idea that something is possible, that this cross-continental collaboration in real time is possible, and then somebody creates a platform like Estuary to make that possible. So it is thinking of the words, techne being like a practice, and logos being more related to like wisdom or knowledge, epistemology, and then these platforms become embedded ways of making that durable and making that accessible to other folks. I do find that interesting.
Okay.
So yeah.
Well, Lawton, thank you very much again. And it was very, very interesting. Everybody was discussing. So I think it was a really good way to close the session today and close the paper session of the whole conference. So thank you so much. We are looking forward to read the complete text. And
thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you to you, and take care. We are in touch. We need to coordinate more things with all the authors for the proceedings, etc. So thank you once again. And now we're going to have just 5 minutes to start the final panel. This time is social and anthropologic panel with Alexandre Cardenas and Antonio Roberts. So we're going to have a little pause offline, and we're back in the same links to get these panels. See you in a bit. 5 minutes to go. Cheers. Thank you, everyone. Okay, we are back now with the final panel of this conference, the International Conference on Live Coding, ICLC 2021, transmitted online from Valdivia in southern Chile. We are welcome the two final speakers. Thank you so much for being here. Alexandra, ¿cómo estás? Hola, un abrazo. Hello. Antonio, it's really good to have you here. Thank you for accepting be part of this. The only thing that I want to say now is this is the final panel, as I said, and the topic is social and anthropologic. So the speakers will share their experiences, their thoughts on this topic, and that's it. Let's chat. Let's listen to you first, and then we can discuss and chat a bit in a more relaxed way. Please. We got Alexandra in the first place. Alexandra, please go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, I can speak first whilst Alexandre is sorting their audio out. It's the joy of working with technology, really, isn't it? Hi everyone. My name is Antonio Roberts, and I'm an artist and curator and performer based in Birmingham in the UK. And I just wanted to briefly introduce myself. I've been doing kind of live coding since around 2014-ish, I think, where I think my first algorithm was in Gateshead, an old police station, and I'm mostly known for doing visuals in this area, but only in the last, I'd say, maybe 2 or 3 years, I've been going back into making music in this area. So again, hopefully you've seen some of those things from both of me, from both my two different identities there. We're just waiting for Alexandre to come back in to the stream. Again, technical issues. Oh, okay, Alexandre is here now. So that's me. I don't know if Alexandre, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hey, can you hear me? No. Can you hear me? Yes? Hey! Hello, thank you very much. Sorry for that, I know what happened. And I'm super excited to be here, very honored to have the chance to be in this space and to share it with Antonio, but also with the rest of you and with the people that will see us in the future and for different places. So I think even if Antonio and I are not experts in this field, like social or anthropologic, we have a lot to say because anyway, everything we do in life is politic and we're part of a society. And we like to see our work from different perspectives. So I think we can start a nice discussion today about what it means to us, our practice, our artistic practice through live coding, and what it means to have our backgrounds, and what it means to us to be in this world. So, thank you. I'm a composer. I am from Colombia originally. Then I moved to Mexico City, and there I learned to do live code. I engaged with the live coding community in Mexico. This was in 2010, more or less. That this community after the UK was like the biggest boom of live coding in the early stages. So we embraced the practice very very much, and we are very open. We were very open to what we could create with it. So far from seeing it as another colonization of ideas or practices, for me it was more like an opportunity to embrace the world and the communication with other artists in a different way, in a more collaborative way. So for me, it was very clear that this practice was going to be a completely different narrative than the one I was used to as a composer of classical music. The academia world usually is very male-dominated and very white and Eurocentric dominated, and I couldn't find a voice there. It was very hard for me to express myself there. So it was thanks to live coding that I could really sit down and open myself, not only regarding my artistic voice, but also regarding my role in the community, in my community, in all the communities I am in. So after Mexico, I moved to Germany and I made a master's degree at the University of the Arts in Berlin. And in Berlin, I making this sound studies and sonic arts master's degree, I could see music as a phenomena of sound, one of the phenomena of sounds in this world. And Western classical music, I could locate it finally as one of the many phenomena of sound and of art in the world. So it helped me open my mind and stop thinking that the only music was what we were taught in school, that was like a Western classical music. And this helped me bridge that gap that I had growing up in a territory where the music of my own territory was not considered high music or interesting music. And I was studying the music of someone else. Someone was not me, and I didn't feel represented. So that's why I think live coding is a practice that allows us to engage in this discussion. And that's why it's so important that we are all here sharing this. Thank you.
Cool. So what we're going to be doing today, we're just going to be basically having a discussion very broadly around sort of diversity, but in all of its different areas, or I say all, we've only have an hour, so we'll do as much as we can here. And we've got basically like 4 main questions that we want to be asking each other. And then, of course, we'll be inviting questions from the audience. And of course, type questions as we're talking as well, and we'll get to those at the end. So yeah, as I said, we're very broadly looking at the sort of diversity and our interpretations of that, our experiences of that within live coding, algorithm, maybe more broadly electronic art and music. So yeah, we'll go ahead with it. And so I wanted to start with the first question, well, first talking point, and just sort of setting a scene for what we're discussing. And it very much relates to a lot of what's happened within the last, I guess now 2 years, and especially in the wake of the Black Lives Matter protests and the death of George Floyd. There are lots of long-standing discussions around decolonization have once again come under the spotlight, and this has seen basically almost every industry, music, art, etc., just question themselves about how they have perpetuated racism and colonial ideas within their workforces. And yeah, so everyone suddenly now is, I guess, like, yeah, questioning their role in it. And so I myself have done had some responses to this, done some things about this. But I think I wanted to ask first, Alexandre, more generally, can we basically decolonize code and computation? Because of course, code and computation isn't without its own biases and is made by people. And in this whole effort to decolonize and address these issues, can we decolonize code and computation? What do you think?
I think we can and we must. And even if we don't know how, I think I've seen in Latin America many movements and different communities engaging in just questioning ourselves. What does it mean? Because we don't even, our languages are colonial languages. We speak in Latin America in Spanish. So, and then we have to learn the computing languages that are mostly in English. So this is already a barrier language in terms of trying to decolonize our computational thinking. So fortunately, all these movements in Latin America are becoming very strong, and we are daring to question what could it be? What ways to computate without this hierarchical software, or this software that is written with these languages that are the colonial languages that have erased the worldview of other worldviews, no? Because that's characteristic of colonization, is destroying what existed or any other possibilities. And the characteristics of these colonizations is that they come from a worldview that is monotheist and that is doesn't allow the presence of other, or the presence of other is something that is weird and is una piedra en el zapato, no, like stone in the shoe. It's like, what is this other? Other is not the thing, the one that is the one that is decided by what the world is, no. So what has happened with this colonialist thinking is that the rest are not as important politically. The rest are just residual or subject of study or discovery, and ultimately of exploitation and or disappearing, killing, no, which has been the case in our countries. So this exploitation comes from the idea that, okay, we are the right ones, the ones who are right in our moral position, no? And therefore the others are less important and don't exist. So this mentality acts by canceling any other possibilities. They can't be there, or they are very weird or not as important. Instead, these other mentalities that have been cancelled have a lot to offer, and that's what I think we need to engage into. On one hand, trying to not recover, but because we still have all this knowledge in us in some way. So how to bring what we have from our ancestors left, and the things that other types of computation, for instance, like very well known, the quipus in Peru. The first day of the conference, we were talking about computation with chemical reactions. Tonight we will have the performance of Paola Núñez Torres del Prado. She's an expert in quipus, and actually she was declared as one of the safeguards of the quipu knowledge, which is a very important thing. And I'm very happy that she's part of our life coding community. And we will see how she, even though she uses also computers as we know them now, she's using the quipu computation, and we have a lot to learn from there. So I think it's important that we engage our thinking and imagination about how to decolonize the way we make computation. And in Latin America, we're doing it a lot, questioning, making groups and meetings, thinking about this. But also, I think it's important that not only the countries and the people from the countries that have been colonized engage in this, but also like everybody think how can we do things in other way, no?
Yeah, because it's quite interesting, at least even for me. That's something, I'm based in the UK, which, look at the colonial history of the UK. There's a lot to see there. But like, even when I'm teaching programming, I notice that, well, firstly, it's all in English, but even interestingly, the code itself is still in mostly American English. Like, especially when I'm having to spell the word color, and in the UK we spell the word color COLOUR, but in America it's without the EU. Well, sorry, North America, the USA, and so even just those sorts of small things, and I know that like that's only in comparison to like what you're talking about, it's a small side of things. It is still recognizing that the code, which quite often, especially when we're talking, when the conversation drifts off into talking about artificial intelligence, and artificial intelligence, machine learning has no biases, etc. We have to remember that it still comes from a person. You know what I mean? Like, as we're saying, it still comes from somebody who is putting forth their own language, their own knowledge. But just wanted to ask as well, before we go on to the second question, I guess, because do you have any examples of like this actively happening? Because I know you mentioned in Colombia, for example, like there are groups of people meeting. Are groups of people that you're aware of making their own programming languages that I guess aren't in English? Like, is this something that you're witnessing?
Yeah, I'm witnessing. I have to name Celeste Betancourt, for example. She's a Colombian live coder. And she, among with other people, are writing live coding languages that are in Spanish. And you can enjoy it. For instance, Cine Vivo. It's a language that you can use in Estuary. It's for visions, and also, yeah, Cine Vivo. And yeah, in Estuary, you can see different software languages for live coding written. For instance, there are people trying to write things in Quechua. I know that too, which is the native language in the Andes countries. And there's also, I think, also David Ogburn is engaged in this with Celeste and with others, making languages that you can program it in your own language. Please let me know if I'm wrong, but this is something I remember. And also, for instance, I think Luis Navarro del Ángel, he's writing also a language that you can, and we can see it in the conference because he has a special place for showing it. ¿Cómo se llama? What is the name of the software of Luis Navarro del Ángel? Which is a software to write music based in cumbia. 6 octavos, gracias Alejandro. It's called 6 octavos, like 6/8. And so yeah, the people and the live coding community is quite engaged in this in Latin America. I think it's very important, and also I would suggest for people who speak English as a native tongue to try to code in other languages, because it also is we all know that learning new languages is wonderful, and each language brings a new way to see the world, a different way to see the world. The same with computation and with software. When you learn new languages, you learn to express and see things differently. So this is happening a lot, yes.
Yeah. Well, again, it's kind of like, it's funny that you say, learning languages is a good thing to be doing. Still, you'll find so many, myself, for example, I speak one language, much to my much to my shame even, because like living in the UK, I know it's still a very I guess colonial mentality that everyone speaks English, right? Which they don't, surprisingly. I know it's hard to believe, but but it still is the attitude. And actually, I just realized as well, you were supposed to ask me this first question, but I did it. I did it by mistake, because I'm going to move on to the next question, okay, which does actually address this whole sort of I guess dual identity, or like how, for example, so you're a Colombian musician, but you've got a very big international practice. Latin America, North America, Europe, you're all over the world. But when you're performing in different places, do you find yourself having to do what's called code switching? So for those unfamiliar with the phrase or the idea of code switching, I guess it's just like switching your personality, how you work, what you're doing based on where you are. So for example, like when you're performing or being an artist in Europe, do you find yourself, I don't know, acting European in your mentality, even in your performances, like in what you're performing, what you're doing? Do you find yourself, and in doing that, do you feel you're doing it like to protect yourself, to safeguard yourself, like, yeah, if it's a thing that you're doing at all?
At least consciously not. I have had a big crisis thanks to live coding, because it was like, wow, all my world, what I thought what composer was, it really fell to the ground, and all I wanted to do was music for algorithm. And then is what happened with all the music that I wanted to write for orchestra and ensembles. Now it's like, and now I want to make beats, which what I learned at the university is that repetitive music is like, and classical music repetition is quite not well seen. And then all I wanted was write music for the algorithms and try to crack the code of how to make people dance. And this was a big crisis. And I had this, like the beginning, I'm still in this crisis. The beginning was in Colombia. I was touring Latin America, and I was in Colombia, realized it during an interview. And then I decided to embrace it, because if this is what it means to me to be a composer, I'm welcome it a lot. And now, curiously, things are opening for me to write for instruments again, including live coding, which I have done before, but I want to do it more. So I think regarding if I would play more Latin American music when I'm in Latin America, or the contrary, I don't do it consciously. Sometimes I feel like I've done reggaeton and cumbia because I really feel like, and but sometimes I'm so influenced by techno scene in Berlin. Sometimes my sound is very Berlin in this sense. So I don't try to change, like to try to please an audience or to try to please bookers. I don't play that. And I think I express myself as the big soup that I am. That I am Colombian, Mexican, German, Italian. Now I have all these things in me that they come without. I'm not expecting or trying to manipulate that. It's weird, and I feel absolutely out of place most of the times, but I'm learning to be comfortable with that, because I know that what we're doing is something that is new, and it's a part of building our own narrative as live coders, embracing this decolonialist practice, which is not responding to what we grew up thinking, and we are swimming in this colonialist mentality that we can't completely get rid of, because I speak 4 languages, 4 of them are colonialist languages. So the way that I can feel free is of this is through my languages in computation, because I don't feel at all this is a colonialist imposition on me, as everything was. I chose this language that I use. I chose Super Collider, I chose Tunnel Cycle, I chose Ixylang, because they are things that resonate with me, not only in my pattern thinking of music, but in my political view of the world. So, yeah, I think that answers a bit, no?
Yeah, oh yeah, I think it does for sure. And I wish I could speak more languages. And actually, I wish I had the opportunity to speak more languages, because living in the UK and even sometimes going abroad, like much to, I guess, the credit of everyone else, everyone's very accommodating to English speaking. Even this conference itself, the main language is still English. So thank you for accommodating. But it's also like, be just a recognition that there are other languages, there are other places in the world other than English speaking North American or European or UK. I think you're asking me the next question, or I could just introduce it myself. It's up to you.
Yeah, go ahead. I love how you're introducing them.
Okay, cool. I will do that. I like doing this. So so like, of course, you've just spoken about I've asked you about your experiences of being like a Colombian musician and, well, an international Colombian musician. And I guess I wanted to talk about my own experiences of being a digital artist, digital musician as of recent. And my experiences, especially in the last 2 years, of this sort of decolonization work happening within these areas, because as has been noted many times in this conference and also generally in Algorave and live coding discourses. Like, I think the Algorave scene is incredibly very, very good at like being active at addressing gender inequalities and making sure that there are no all male lineups. Like, I don't think I've ever seen one at all. Excuse me. But still, like, within my artistic career, like, I've been an artist, I say professional, earning money from it for like at least 12, 15 years or something. And so many times I've been like the only Black person in the room, and I'll use this term person of color. I know it's a very vague term, but just because I know it's also a very North American term as well, but yeah, I've been usually the only Black person in the room. And I've noticed that. It's definitely a thing I noticed. It's getting a bit better, but I still feel that like, because the status quo is to have, if everything's going fine, if everyone's happy in the room, if it's a room full of, I guess, white people, then why go against the status quo if you're not necessarily being affected by it? And that's something which, again, it's an attitude which I have noticed more so in the absence of any action being done, apart from in the last 2 years, especially again. And so this is something. This is where I'll bring in, I guess, like something that I've been doing recently. So last year, after the Black Lives Matter protests, Alex McLean, me and him were talking about like things we wanted to do, and of course we had the Compassion Through Algorithms compilation, which was donating money to a group in Sheffield, Black girls who do kind of performance. But then we started this thing called Algo Afro Futures, which is really, it's a mentoring program for and it was a pilot. I'll say it was a pilot. Like, it was a very small program that we ran. It ran from this year, from like April till June, and it was for 4 early career Black artists based in the West Midlands, which is an area of the UK, and just to introduce them to live coding, or to show them what live coding is. And we had to be very careful about how we went about it, because even like when it comes to, I guess, these sorts of introducing, like, if you're introducing this type of music and way of working to unfamiliar people, or like people who haven't done it, we've got to be aware of the temptation to sort of like have them assimilate into our group. That in order for this to be resolved, in order for Lycon to be more ethnically diverse, they need to learn about our ways of working. No, that's not. So we needed to avoid that, and we made sure to, at least in our writing and description and how we talked about it, to address this. Because one thing I think that we're aware of is that after the people on the program, they spent 2 months learning live coding. Me and Alex taught them what we could, and we had a performance. But we have to be aware that in the end, they might not necessarily want to carry on with live coding. They might see some problems with it. Maybe it's just, the programming language is too difficult and they don't like it. Fair enough. Maybe it could be, as you were saying before, that these programming languages are still largely built by white men and it doesn't reflect their way of working. And so they reject it for whatever reason. And this isn't things that necessarily happen, but just being aware of that. And so, with all of that said, we still did the program, and it was really successful. Like, I was really happy with like how it happened. And I say success in that the participants stuck with it, and that they made some great music, and the public. Sorry, go for it. Yeah, sorry.
The artist, I saw the results, and I following some of the artists that I found through this project that you had, and it's wonderful. Some like Rosa Francesca.
She's amazing.
She's amazing, and she already was singing and making her music, and then the way she included live coding here, I thought it was super inspiring, because it was she made it her own completely, and I think opening spaces like this is very important, right?
Yeah, and you're right. That's it. It's the opening the spaces, giving the opportunity to those who may, for whatever reason, have not wanted to, I guess, like get in contact with the main live coding groups, and that could be because, again, there's like I'm lucky. Well, I say I'm lucky. Like I've known. So I used to be in a laptop band with a few people. Shelley, who was talking earlier, Shelley Knotts, and she introduced me to this whole world of live coding and everything else. So I've always felt fairly comfortable in this sort of environment. But I know that still it might not be very welcoming, and I am so used to, I guess it's unfortunate, but like very used to working in very white spaces, whether that be gallery spaces or the electronic music scene, or even I listen to heavy metal. Like that's also a scene. So it's just like I'm very used to, but I know that and yeah, there's a lot of work to be done in this area. But again, the Algorithm for Futures program that happened, hopefully it's happening again next year, just waiting on some decisions but what was interesting about doing that program and even just announcing it, I got contacted by so many different people from other countries asking if they could take part, and they couldn't take part only because like the capacity of us, like we were but 2 people organizing this. There was no way for us to organize a bigger program. But I think even just having we're having people from like the rest of continental Europe, having people from Switzerland and America get in contact, I think it shows that there's a need for this type of program. But I guess one of the things which I'll end on for this question is that in this work for decolonization, for addressing these issues that we've talked about, we need to make sure that the work, the solutions aren't still resting on the shoulders of Black people, because this was a program run by me and Alex, but it wasn't to solve racism. We're not solving racism within the life code, and that isn't for me. Like if anything, I'm the one experiencing it through my life. It isn't for me to solve. And so even though I'm glad everyone and this program was very well received, but the work to decolonize is something that everyone needs to play an active role in doing so. And like you say, whether that might be trying out different languages that are not in English languages. It might be trying to start your own program, but more than that, like you said, it's to kind of give space, to step back, to give space for those voices who are unheard, or for those who want to try but for whatever reason might not feel comfortable in doing so. And especially like sometimes I don't necessarily want to be an activist. Like it's tiring having to constantly speak up and having to shout. Sometimes I just want to make music and make visuals, but in a comfortable environment. But yeah, so that's what. Did you want to add anything to that, Alexandre?
Yeah, that I think the big thing that I want to emphasize in this talk, and I want to that also some people tell us their ideas about it, is that each one needs to be responsible of this, and it's not only we people who suffer racism. No, that's a term we decided yesterday that could be a nice option to compare to people of color. I don't feel fine with people of color, though I understand the historical importance it has in the United States, and I don't mean to not value that, but I feel when people think of me as a people of color, I think, okay, white people have a color too. Why? Like we all are people of some color anyway. That's just my personal view. So I have used the non-white for a while, but yesterday we were finding out that we feel very comfortable with the idea of people who experience racism.
Sure.
So yeah, right, Anthony?
Yeah, because even in the UK, and I don't want to derail this too much in going into terminology, but I know that, like, of course, the phrase "people of color" is very North American. In the UK, we have BAME or BAME, Black Asian minority ethnic, which all of these phrases have their own problems. But again, like generally as well, we want to make sure that the work, like you're saying, isn't resting on the shoulders of people who experience racism, as I'm sure, and this is where like I've got to be careful. Like I do relate it, but I know it's not the same. But like I'm sure, and we spoke about in this community that it shouldn't be always women who are speaking out against sexism. It should be men as well. And so this is what I mean. This is why I'm glad that the algorithm live coding community is very outspoken about that and including men. But it's like, okay, so now it's those who don't experience racism also need to speak up against this. And I really do hope that there's more people running programs like Algorithm for Futures, more compilations like the Compassion Through Algorithms, just because that's how this changes, not by Shall I go to the next question? Or the final question. So this is again, it's me to you. I like asking the questions. It's all right. And so this is it kind of goes literally against what we just said, because we just said how the work shouldn't be falling on us, the people who are experiencing racism or sexism, to do the work. But we do want to actually sort of begin to end this part by discussing some solutions, some ways to address this very big topic. Like, what is it that can be done? And and even just give suggestions. So do you want to start with a couple, or do you want to and we can jump in and everything, but go for it.
I think first to understand that being completely decolonized may not be possible, at least in our generation, or in this body, maybe not. But whatever move forward we do regarding that aspect will be good for the general community. Like, life is not like you can decrete something from now on happens and then everybody thinks the same. Life doesn't work like that. But I think we as a LiveCon community, we are setting very good examples, and I'm very happy to see how it has resonated in different ambience we touch with an algorithm, with a workshop. People get super excited, and even I've been in contact with corporative world, or with the universities, for instance, are asking me lately for advice, like how can we, what are the strategies that live coders use? Because people recognize that even if it's not perfect, we have a very good balance in all these aspects, and we think about this, the colonialism, and we open spaces, and so I think we're in a good way, being non-centralized, the way we do our things, the way that we are inclusive, and we open safe spaces for everybody to be themselves. Because also, I think it's important that we recognize that it's not only the people who suffer racism or sexism that are the victims of this capitalist, colonialist, patriarchist, monotheist world, but it's also the white people itself, the white man itself. They are sufferers, even if they don't notice it. But when a man has the imposition to be the provider, or has the imposition to be the one who knows more in the room, or these kind of things are also hurting, So I think what the strategies that we are doing so far are working great, and these spaces are helping us think about it more. And what I suggest is that we keep on developing new strategies. I have seen from my perspective that teaching workshops is a great practice. And this is also, Olivia Jack said it a month ago when she was in Barcelona, and someone asked her, do you feel more an artist or a programmer? And she said, I feel I'm an artist. The program is an expression of my artistry, but also teaching is part of this artistic expression. I feel the same. I feel workshops are not only to learn the technique, but to engage with the community and to engage with the new politics of seeing the world and seeing the music. I also, when I didn't even question myself about patriarchy, I was very macho myself in my 20s, 30s. I didn't believe that making things only for women would be important. I think that I thought that it was actually detrimental somehow. But then when I came to Europe, and then I was invited to teach in a women workshop only. immediately as I entered the room, I felt the difference, and I felt this is what we need, this safe space, because even if we are nice people, we can trigger different things to each other, and women, we are still, we need support, and opening the spaces where we can feel safe, it's very important. So I think opening more spaces for like special groups, no, like women, or people who suffer racism, and also we haven't talked about disabled people, but this is super important. Sorry,
I was going to pick up on a couple of points, the first 2 points that you said before you go on to that one. But yeah, definitely we need to talk about that. But like, yeah, with the workshops, I completely agree that workshops are a really great way to go about this. And I also, like, I have witnessed a couple of, I guess, bad examples of workshops, and I'm not going to necessarily call out any particular people, but and I'd say that especially when delivering workshops, you're right. We shouldn't just focus just on the technical side of things. In my workshops, for example, I always make sure, to, even if very briefly, mention about the very short history of Algarve, but including that it is very diverse in terms of gender, especially at the moment, because otherwise, especially if you think about how we fit into the wider electronic music scene, if you think that we're just part of that, you'd be like, oh, it's another electronic music thing, which is just going to be white men again. And it's like, no, it's not just that. So, so the education is also about, like you're saying, the community aspect of it is talking about how it isn't just who can accrue the biggest tech setup and be very macho about things. So yeah, you're completely right there. And then the second point, again, I am mostly just agreeing with you, by the way. I'm not necessarily answering it, but just like the safe spaces, and I completely agree that having women-only spaces, having people of color or people who experience racism or Black people-only spaces, I can see the value in that completely. Like, just because it's it just allows for freedom of expression without having to hold back, or like without having to be wary of those forces which may have oppressed you previously in some spaces. And it's I even having run Algarve for Futures, like Algarve for Futures, I guess is the only time that I have really been engaged with the issue of race within electronic music and to some extent electronic art. And being part of that, running the program, I suddenly was like, okay, yeah, there's definitely a problem here that needs to be addressed, and I can see that the joy of the participants and the joy of myself having seen this program happen. It was just like, I can see why people do these sorts of programs and targeted to specific groups. And then, as you're just about to say, people with disabilities, like it's not something I experienced myself, but I can similarly see the same need for that to be a thing, because so often all of these groups that we're mentioning are just so left out of the conversation. They're excluded, whether through inaction or lack of consideration, or hopefully not actively, but I'm sure it still does happen that someone is very actively excluded, in which case it's just discrimination.
Exactly. And also to think that there are other conversations, not only the mainstream one, no? Like there are many things going underground, and live coding has been also growing from the underground, and it has. I'm very curious to see, because I've seen live coding 10 years. I've seen it, or 11. I've seen it grow so much. This community, and in such a healthy way. And I always wish, I hope, oh my God, we can continue getting together, because we love what we do. We have the passion for doing it, and getting together to teach each other, because nobody knows everything and we all make mistakes. And like seeing things from other point of view. And that would say, I think that's the main strategy, because it's not that we women are in charge to get other women on board and open spaces. Also, everybody has something to say about this and something to collaborate with this, no? Same with race, same with disabilities. So I think what is important is that because this all is political. We tend to think that politics is only like the parties and left and right, but that's politics is everything that has to do with connecting with each other and negotiating things. Everything we do, even at home, is politic. So what I was talking about, this the one against the world, no? That if we see it from an anthropological point of view, and this I have to thank Rita Segato, the amazing anthropologist from Argentina. I have been listening to her a lot, reading her, and I thank her because she has given me words for things that I didn't know existed, and things that she's actually putting names on. And as we have been saying, categorizing and putting names is difficult because how you can categorize a human is the capitalistic mind, the colonialist mind is the one that makes things, makes life into things. Cosificación, le decimos en español. So it's like reification, like objectification of life, of women, of territory. With life coding, we have given ourselves again power not to see ourselves as things, but we value the relationships, which is not the colonialist thought. The colonialist thought is what is not me; it's an object, and is of less important. So I think what we need to achieve, and this is also a personal exercise, not only this space is wonderful because we can do it in group, but also in the daily life is important to become aware of how the politics of our world are. And we struggle between these two things, and the capitalism that sees thing, life, music, water as thing, women as thing that can be exploited, and the other thoughts that is more plural, that allows contradiction and paradoxes. Like, okay, the colonial thinking is if you are not us, you're against us. Instead, other thinkings that are not Western, not colonialists, like Native American, Asian, is more like, okay, you're not like us. It's okay. You're part of it. And A is good as B is good, and is more plural. And I think this is what life coding has done: is a plural community. And I hope that with the growth of this community, we can continue thinking this. Preserving this and nurturing each other, offering spaces for each other, finding the value, stop seeing our music or ourselves as things, but as our relationships. And that's what makes us very strong, because we are friends, we are connected, we are open for diversity, and pluralism is what we need in this world. So I think that's a good strategy, what we're doing, and I hope we continue with this.
I think that's a great place to end on, a great positive note, a hopeful note to be ending on. You know, again, like, it's a good thing that we're all here and watching it. You know, everyone's here watching the video, everyone's here in the comments. So like, we're all here because we have some hope for the future that things can still get better. And yeah, hopefully next year, future, we will get there. But I think we should stop, and I think we've got like 10 minutes for questions. And so is it us reading the questions out, or is he going to come back to read them out for us? If not, I can. I'm on the YouTube channel. So I'm trying to see the questions in the chat here, and I can't quite see them. Oh well.
Oh, there's so many on YouTube. Are you watching YouTube?
Yeah, I'm trying to see. Let's see if we can pick one out, because I know
help us, Alexandre, there too.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Here we go. We're back.
Yeah. Thank you, guys, because it has been very organic and very, with a really nice flow. I mean, the discussion. Thank you a lot.
It's okay.
Yes, and
thank you.
Well, we got time. I'm just appearing not to stop you, it's just to say we are okay, so don't be afraid. I would like to go back maybe as a trigger for discussion and something that Alexandra was addressing about this cosificación, which is, you know, the treat people as things. And there is a big issue probably in many places in the world, in the ex-colonies, you know, and that is a very, very important here in Latin America. That was trying to explain in my comment on the chat, which is this is one of the reasons we had so strong feminist movements here in Latin America, because women are fighting to get the right to own their own bodies, you know, because they are treated for centuries like things that men we can take and, you know, trade or do whatever we want. Well, not me. I mean, you know, I mean, in general terms, it's the culture that we had, or still we have as a basement, sadly. So we are trying to change that step by step, I think. So
Yeah,
that is an important thing that probably I would like to Alexandra and Antonio maybe get further on that.
Yeah, I think this critique is keep in mind that this is not directed to a person or a race. No, it is. I think we need to criticize the political system we live in and criticize our position. Like, just because you're not an activist, what is an activist? Everything I do is activism. No, everything I do at home. Huh?
Yeah. Micropolitics.
Sorry? Micropolitics. That's super important. Something that Rita Segato always says too, like what happens in the house is also politics, no? Because many of the aggressions to women are not considered political, like a general, like a issue of importance politically, because it happened in the house, or she was drunk, or it was in the house, it was indoors. And this is another tactic to cosify the women, no? To make her a thing. Cosificación. So that's, yeah. In Latin America, of course, with all the natural resources that have been exploited, and I've seen it with my eyes disappear. And you see petroleras, oil companies or mining companies arriving. First things they do is, where are they going to put the burdel? No, where are they going to put, like, the women are part of this extraction, and their bodies in Africa. So reification is the right term. Yes, definitely. It's having to do with res, no, for Latin. So I also want to say I don't like to be called a producer, because for me this comes from the musical industry that sees music as a product. And I prefer to think of me as a creator of music, which has a term already called composer. But let's see, all these terms need to change, need to live, need to have their own cycle, and then finally they maybe end and switch to something else now. But it's important that we think about how to give more importance to our relationship with each other, and less important to things and products. Antonio, what do you think?
I don't think actually I have anything I want to add to that, to be honest. You said it all so beautifully. So yeah, I won't necessarily. Yeah, sorry, you said it all. So I can't add anything.
And yes, from the questions on YouTube.
Yeah, any more questions?
There is an interesting comment by Kate Sikio. Sorry, Kate, I mispronounced your surname again. But she's saying live coding has very little objects. It is mostly ephemeral. Maybe this is why will make it easier to think about decolonizing. That's an interesting point.
Very interesting.
Ephemeral, I guess ephemeral.
In a way.
Yeah, like there isn't. Like I haven't necessarily seen so much pre-packaging live coding in the same way you can go like, hey, you want to learn live coding, you want to be the future of music or whatever, and like, just even that might be by the nature of that it's like based around code, or maybe that's like an active effort through us of not talking about it in those ways. But yeah, and I can definitely kind of see that it's we haven't been commodified so much yet. I don't think. I know all the headlines in the articles try and make it sound like that, but no, we haven't. Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, I remember a headline, something like the future of electronic music is here. Or something.
Yeah, and that even that like is still again quite problematic. It goes into like the it favors like headliners, experts, masters of a certain music, and it's like no, we're there isn't that much. And for example, like I really like how at so many, I guess, like high profile events or like big live coding events which happen in like prestigious galleries, you'll sometimes find someone who's like, this is their third or fourth algorithm, like they're very new to the scene. And I like that they still are able to perform at these prestigious events. And I think that really points to us trying to at least not have so much of a hierarchy, like not favoring this, you are an expert, you're a master. So yeah, I like that. But still, I'm sure there'll be another headline next year about how we're destroying DJs yet again. But again, I'm really glad that we actively fight against it, because it's it could happen. I've seen it happen with other artistic and music things in the past, so I'm glad it hasn't happened here.
Yes. We need more mixtures. We need to play DJs and algorithms together.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Yeah, why not? And more DJ sets with live coding too.
Yes,
sure,
absolutely. Well, let's see. We got maybe room for one or two comments or questions. I'm checking the chat from Top Lab Barcelona. They're saying accessibility is something quite important for community. Yes, totally agree. And that's related to everything. No? The way we organize the events, how the platforms from live coding are high level in terms of computing, because they are more accessible. So there is a lot of things to do.
And I think with what Alexandre was saying about the importance of doing workshops as well, like that is another way of making everything accessible, because it means that there's a way to access what we do. Like I was recently doing some workshops in programming using Hydra, and I'd say like maybe half the people out of 10, 5 of them hadn't done any programming, and it's just having the tools there which were accessible to people in all senses, whether that be it's open source, it's on a web browser, whatever. It just means that suddenly something which might have looked very opaque, this mysterious black box of the laptop, is now just that little bit more accessible, at least in terms of the technical side of things. And then hopefully through engaging with the community and everything else about it, they begin to learn that, it's accessible in that sense of way. They can access the performances and everything. But yeah, so, I'm sure there's still work to do. Don't get me wrong. Like some of that's, installing software is still fun. Trying to install software is still fun. But it's one of those things which I think it's doing some stuff right.
I always mention that for me it was super important to discover the open source software, because I didn't have to pay for it, and for me it made a big difference. I know for some people it's like, but that's nothing what you pay for Max and SPA, and well, for me it was, and I know a lot of people for whom paying for software is a big barrier. So I think that's also a great thing about the live coding community, that we really support and create open source software. And the other thing I wanted to say is that someone in the chat asked, who is this anthropologist I talk about? So I don't know if you can write it on YouTube, because I don't have here at YouTube Alejandro, but if you write, her name is Rita Segato from Argentina. And she's super relevant not only for women from Latin America, but I think she has been published in many languages. So if you get a hold of her, if you're curious about other ways of seeing the world, she even criticizes anthropology as created as is a science created by the colonialist mind, but it's good that it has the way to see itself, and this is the people we need to feed with our thinking, with people who can see society from a point of view a bit more far away than us, and can analyze where does it come from. So I invite everybody to read her. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Alexandra. Well, we should going to close this conversation. I don't know if Antonio wants to say something else.
No, just thank you to Alexandra. Really great discussion. Love speaking with you, and thanks to whole of ICLC for having me here. I know we were not in person, but it's nice to be around everybody, and yeah, look forward to seeing you all again soon.
Yeah, thank you for everything,
Yes.
Alejandro.
Thank you a lot, guys. It was really interesting and nice talk about these topics. I'm totally sure this conversation have released some seeds that will grow up in many people. And that's, as I said, when I send emails to all the speakers, we got a lot of young people watching here in Chile and in our city, which all of this is absolutely new. So that's is a very important thing for us. We're really happy. So thank you. Now we're going to move to something very special. We have two things to do. One is at the end, say goodbye, invite people to the performances and to watch the exhibition, which is on the website. But before that, now we're going to something very special, which is the announcement of the host for the forthcoming ICLC in 2022. So stay tuned, and we're going to share some videos and talk with the people who are hosting this next year. Thanks once more, Alexandra and Antonio.
Thanks,
And
Alejandro.
Thank you very much.
stay with
Thank you,
us.
Antonio.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Cheers.
Ciao. Bye.
Cool. I'm going to leave.
Hola. Hello again. Well, primero quiero dar un saludo, avisar en castellano a los amigos que nos están viendo. Tenemos ahora un momento muy especial. Se va a realizar el anuncio del siguiente anfitrión, organizador de la próxima versión de la conferencia ICLC, la International Conference on Live Coding, para el año 2022. Así que, what I'm saying, it was for the people who are listening and watching us. Now we had the announcement for the host and the organization and organizers for the next version of the ICLC in 2022. So please welcome the team. Please introduce yourselves and share with us what you have to share. Thank you.
So, hello world, hello ICLC 2022. I'm happy to announce that the
coding community.
Hello world.
We are Yannick, Cecilia, and Patrick.
And we're broadcasting live from inside the ZKM Center for Art and Media in Karlsruhe.
And we're very happy to announce to host the next international conference on live coding in the year 2022.
Happy to see you there.
See you next year. Bye.
So Karlsruhe it is. But Ivan, you wanted to tell more, I guess.
Yeah, there are a couple of more videos that I would like. Could you? Yes.
Live coding from a lot of time,
Long time now.
long time ago, and we created the community in Barcelona, Top Lab Barcelona, and we also run the On the Fly project, which is an European project that helps to the community in different ways, the community of live coders in different ways, in artistic ways, and also to help research and also try to develop or at least understand the public around live coding. And we work here in Angar, in Barcelona, and we wrote this project with the help of them, and also we work with these other institutions, CITKM, or CITKM, CCU, and Ludmila. And yeah, we are happy to be here talking about the ICLC.
So on behalf of the Top Lab community of Barcelona and the other institutions and communities that are involved in the On the Fly project, we are really happy to organize together and host, well, the ICLC 2022 is going to be host, as Alexandre just announced, I'm assuming, in CITKM in Karlsruhe. And so basically we invite all the communities of live coders around the globe to join and support and collaborate with the conference, and we are pretty sure it's going to be amazing.
Yay.
Hello, world.
Hello, world.
Hello,
World.
hello, hello,
World.
hello, hello,
World.
hello, hello,
World.
hello, 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 hello,
World.
hello, hello,
World.
hello,
World.
hello,
World.
hello, world, 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 hello, 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 worlds, 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 worlds,
So thank you. I'm going to pass to Patrick and Luca to say hello world.
Hello, world. Just rather quickly, we had already a big international festival and symposium about live coding in 2013. And so I'm very happy that the live coding scene will again be not home, but will again come to visit Karlsruhe. And yes, looking very much forward to hopefully see as many as possible there in person. And yeah, let's hope for a great time. Luca.
Ja, pozdravljen svet. Hola mundo, hello world, also from Ludmila in Ljubljana, Slovenia. I'm really happy and honored to be part of the organizing team for the next year ICLC. And yeah, as you see, I'm here in our studio where we are just preparing for a second day of an Orca meetup workshop. So there's more live coders coming in every minute. And thanks for a great conference this year, and looking forward for tonight's performances also.
So thank you, everyone, and hope to see everyone in a year from now.
Take care.
Great. Wonderful, wonderful. Amazing news. Congratulations and thanks for taking, this responsibility that will be absolutely an amazing conference next year. So I'm totally sure that you're going to do a great job. So all the good vibes for you, and thank you for sharing this. So everybody, stay tuned for send your proposals, applications, and visit CTKM. Hopefully, in person, and maybe you can run a hybrid thing, which is the more usual thing nowadays. So that's it. Now we're going to after this big thanks to the
I'm Fabian
team.
van Sluis, founder of Creative Coding Utrecht, saying hi to ICLC. Hello.
That was a little moment of the previous videos. Quiero presentarles al equipo central de la conferencia que hicimos acá en Chile, la ICLC desde Valdivia. Y tenemos aquí a Maite García, encargada de diseño, comunicación y todo lo que tiene que ver con las redes sociales, y Cristian Oyarzún, a cargo de la curatoría artística, la producción artística y de todo lo que tiene que ver con la transmisión y el streaming. Muchas gracias a este equipo. Voy a explicar también esto para los amigos que no hablan castellano. So we are presenting finally the team that was the core of our conference is streamed from Valdivia in southern Chile. We got Maite Garcia. She is designer and was in charge of all the social media and communications of the conference. We are all in blue. Yes, it's a happy coincidence.
Can you hear me?
And Cristian Oyarzún, he is the artistic creator, producer, and who was in charge of the streaming in general terms. So thank you guys, and just saying that it was an amazing experience. Not only 3 days, you know very well that this is a job of many months and days trying to configure out to sort out many things. And just want to say a big thanks to our sponsors and partners. We got the Ministerio de la Cultura y las Artes y el Patrimonio de Chile, que they funded this conference, and our partners, Taller Compartido La Cisne Negro en Valdivia, Aguante la Cisne Negro, como decimos en Latinoamérica, y también Fábrica de Medios. They give us support and they were consultant for us in the streaming stuff. Y la Universidad Austral de Chile, that give us all the academic support and basically a basement, a platform to launch all this conference. What else? Stay tuned. In a couple of hours at 3 p.m. Chile times, there is an on-the-flight cantina session. You can find the information in the website. There is a Jitsi Meet link, and you just click, go, to chat with people about live coding and all the things related. You don't have to be an expert on that. There are not workshop focused these sessions. It's more like a moment to exchange ideas, talk about these things in artistic, social terms, etc., philosophic terms. That's it. And don't forget to visit the website and have a look on the exhibition. We got two sections with the exhibition. The exhibition curated especially for the conference, but we got Maqui Naturalis, virtual reality exhibition curated by our friends from Top Lab Mexico. So you need to go to an exhibition designed in Mozilla Hubs. Very interesting, with many pieces created with machine learning techniques. So it's a very interesting exhibition. All of this, you can find the links and information in our website. So I'm giving the word to my colleagues now.
Bueno, ¿me escuchan por tu micrófono?
Yo no, creo que no te escucho.
Bajito. A ver, y ¿ahora me escucho mejor? Ya, bueno, eso, quería agradecer a todas, a todos. In Spanish and in English, thank you, Maite, thank you, Alejandro. We, as Alejandro explained before, we have been working for about 2 years probably, from the postulation, the applying, and then to find funds and to make this real. And I'm really happy to what happened, because I think in terms of whole design, we could have been living what we conceive, a kind of transversal context and global context and a very diverse experience. Then I feel very contento. Y un poco en Spanish, agradecer a todas. Ha sido muy interesante tener un espectro tan amplio, que es parte, ¿cierto?, permanentemente del objetivo que nos producimos con Maite y con Alejandro, y que de alguna manera, pese a esta limitación del online, nos permitiese establecer una conexión profundamente humana detrás de este contexto, que claro, también es académico, también es intelectual, también es estético, pero sobre todo el elemento del factor humano ha sido para nosotros fundamental ver cómo desde la elección de temas, las invitaciones o el trabajo comunitario permanentemente nos ha permitido, yo creo, tener una experiencia que ha sido bastante amable, tanto acá desde el backstage, del StreamYard, lo hemos visto en redes sociales, y creo que eso ha sido un éxito de toda la comunidad, insisto, nosotros como organizadores, ¿cierto?, pero también de ustedes que están dando los contenidos y activando todas sus ideas y emociones a partir del live coding. Eso, muchísimas gracias a todas. Alejandro también te ha portado súper bien en tu rol de frontman. Muchas gracias.
No, gracias a ustedes. Maite, por favor.
Hello, hola. Primero en castellano. Gracias a Alejandro y a Cristian por incluirme en este proyecto. Bueno, todo el trabajo lo hemos hecho entre los tres, ahí, cada uno con su expertise, pero este año ha sido particularmente loco en Chile todavía, y con la pandemia de por medio, pero yo creo que eso no impidió que se hicieran las cosas igual, y creo que salió muy, muy bien, y logramos conectar todas las partes del mundo que quisieran incluirse en este proyecto. No me acuerdo lo que dije al principio, pero si me ayudan con el inglés.
Just thank and acknowledgement, thank you to people, and finally you said that we ran it everything against or through the thick and thin, against all odds, contra viento y marea.
And we connect all the people no matter the place, physical place. And I think it was wonderful. 3 days intention, very
intense.
intensive, but great. I invite you to share the YouTube Top Lab Valdivia and the Instagram, and you can find all the website. But you can review all the contents there.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. One more thing about what Maite said. We're going to polish a little bit, especially the first day streaming. So we're going to get a playlist more clean with the, we have these videos with streaming problems, so we're going to put the right versions that we played after the first part with the problem. So stay tuned, please follow us, and we'll see you soon. Don't forget the activities and get connected to the other link for the performances at 4 p.m. Chile time. See you there. Enjoy. See you. Bye. Thank you. Digamos un chao en el chat.
Sí, en el chat ahí dice thank you and see you at 3 p.m. Pero dale no lo estoy cerrando todavía para que quede abierto el chat. Ya, bacán. Qué bueno que en este académico que entretenido la conferencia, man. ¿Qué nomás? Don Hall. En la cantina a las 3 p.m. Rusia, claro. Nosotros 4 p.m. Ya.
Seguramente le tiráis al YouTube.
Espérate, el mismo mensaje. No, sí. And see you at 3 p.m. Ya, sí. Voy a hacer un copy paste. And see you at 4 p.m. at Performance Solutions. Ya, ahí sí. Tú me dices cuando cierro. Ahora. Va, no vi tu comentario. ¿O está en otro lado? ¿Finalizo?
Sí, dice.